Well, today on the show, I've got Mr. Rory O'Donovan. So this is a man that I have crossed paths with quite a few times over the years, but oddly, we've never really had the chance to talk. So I reached out to the man and said, look, I think you should come and have a chat with me. And, mate, he was good enough to say yes. So, Rory, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, glad to be here.
Mate, as far as it goes in, Brisbane and Australian car scene, your name and the things that you've been involved with are pretty legendary.
Yeah, it's not how I look at it, but kind of built like a reputation and then sort of, I don't know, just like talking to people about cars, and that kind of evolved into, I don't know, people wanting to attend to things that I do with cars. So it's kind of snowballed, I guess.
Yeah, and I know that on your profiles you put, your hobby became a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that's something that you've obviously, pursued consciously.
Yeah, it's a catchphrase that I picked up over the years, like when hobbies become lifestyles. But if I'm going to be honest, cars were never a hobby for me. That was like deep in the blood. Like there's never, a lot of people talk about when did you get into cars? And people, sometimes people ask that, oh, so when did you get into cars? Because a lot of people get into cars when they get their license or they meet like a group of friends or something like that. For me, it was, there's never been a moment in my life where I wasn't into cars. And I mean into cars, like consuming everything I can. My mum hates it being brought up, but my first word was car. Yeah, just funny as. But yeah, so it's a proper, like, just an addiction almost. I just like the term hobbies become lifestyles, mainly because converting something that you're interested in into a business is a pretty cool prospect. But yeah, it's definitely been more than a hobby for the majority of my life.
Well, I'd say so, because we were chatting just before we jumped on here. So, you're on booze cruising in the early days. And again, if you're, Australian, Southeast Queensland, don't know how far booze cruising spread outside of Australia. But that was fundamental back in the early 00s, I think, for bringing car culture together and out of, just groups of people that knew each other separately, groups of sort of 5, 10, 15, 20, and actually building a genuine community via the internet.
Yeah, booze cruising was massive. I'd say anyone who was around sort of the late 2000s, getting into cars around then, whether they were in school or like had their license and stuff, if you were into cars in the 2000s, especially the late 2000s, booze cruising for Brisbane, and I think for a large portion of Australia, maybe not so much Victoria and West WA and stuff, it was like the Bible.
Mate, it was the place to be. And you still see people talking about, things that we'd often have on there, where you'd be looking to buy a VL Turbo and swapping it for a fish tank. And like there are things that you still see popping up that, originated on booze cruising in the OOs. Like I don't know if people realise how fundamental it was to the scene.
Yeah, I still meet people today. I have friends today. Like we have mutual friends. Andrew Foy. I met him on booze cruising. He's a year younger than me, and I remember he was 16 and I was 17. I'd got my license. He didn't have his, but he had his car already. And I picked him up on the way to go to Power Cruise or something when I was like 17. I'd never met the guy before. I just met him on booze cruising, and yeah, it was the strangest thing ever. I remember using a Refidex to get to his house. Aging myself bad there. But
yeah, if you don't know what a Refidex is, Google it. It's very entertaining. You wonder how the hell we ever found anything.
Yeah, police complain about us using their phones while driving. Using a Refidex while driving?
Oh, man.
Way more dangerous.
Trying to orientate the map. And I also remember trying to find a street light so that you could see it. Because you're there at night and you're like, where am I? And the worst part was if you actually had a Refidex that was out of date and you were going to a new area and that area hadn't been mapped into the Refidex yet.
Yep.
You're like, oh.
Yeah, because they come out once a year?
Yeah.
So if there was a development that had been made in the middle of the year.
And mate, I was too poor to buy a new Refidex. I'm pretty sure Mum and Dad bought me my first one, and that was the one I used forever.
Yeah, because I was really on the end of the Refidex thing, but when I first got my license, GPSs was so expensive. They were huge money. My parents were like, no, I'm not buying you a GPS, use a Refidex.
Absolutely.
And then you're trying to scroll down and you would think that you go next page and it would be the next map, but then you got to go 40 pages. And
yeah, not a good way to find stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm much happier just talking to my car and going, high.
Yeah.
And particularly because you can retrofit it, because I don't like new cars, I only like old cars.
Yeah. Yes.
So
I've got a
being
retrofit in mind.
Yeah,
so,
because and then you're just like, yep. Like, I really don't want to go back to that. Okay, so in those boost cruising days, so you sort of found, so you started off, you're a young bloke, you were right into it, so always mad for it. But that was that sort of where it really kicked off in terms of the community, like meeting people and getting out to events, or were you getting to them even earlier than that?
I was definitely, boost cruising would have been how I learnt about events. I always wanted to go to them, and I wanted to do car stuff. I'd go to motor shows like the Brisbane Motor Show. That's another thing that a lot of people probably don't realise existed.
No.
I'd go to that with my dad every year. And everything else I didn't really know. Like, I'd see it in magazines. I'd see the coverage after the fact in a magazine that there'd been an event on. But I didn't know when they were on. And then joining boost cruising and getting on boost cruising, it was like, oh, Jamboree's coming up. Power Cruise is coming up. You know what I mean? Auto Salon is coming up.
Yeah, you'd know what was happening.
Yeah, and so then I could get to those with my friends or with my dad, because my dad, like, I'm into cars because a lot of my family's into cars. That's why it was from day one. But that was pretty much, when I started to learn how to, I could attend like street racing events and stuff like that when I first got my license and that sort of thing, which was super crucial in my development into cars. But yeah, it was, I already had the knowledge and the addiction, and boost cruising kind of, it just like added fuel to the fire.
Put it all together.
Yeah, put it all together. And then I could actually go to events and see the cars that I would read about and consume information on. And that was the spark, really.
Because, man, that was such good days. Like, I have these ridiculous memories of, like when they were actually boost cruising drives.
Yep.
And there were things like Broadwater Car Park on a Saturday night, and you go to the Spit on a Sunday, like stuff that is now, like, long gone.
Oh, yeah.
But I do truly remember, left-hand lane of the M1, and there being, like, 3 kilometres of cars all on a single cruise.
Yep.
And I try to remember if it's UHF 15 or 16. It's one of those. But, everybody on that, and that was all organised through a website, and you'd have hundreds of people coming to these things.
It was crazy. That was Broadwater. I technically missed Broadwater. By the time I got my license, which was like, 2006, 2007, Broadwater was already under like redevelopment, I think, by the Gold Coast Council. So I sort of missed that. But the ones that I was attending that when I didn't have my license with, mates, older brothers and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Computer Road, all that sort of jazz. Like, I've always had a deep-seated love for like streeting, I guess is what they call it, whether it's drifting or street racing and stuff like that. And the M1's always been like, I guess, like Brisbane's hallowed ground for it.
Mate, 300 Club.
Yeah, M1. I was about to say M1 300 Club. There's still a few cars. Like, I don't know about a few, but there's still. I have like a crazy. I don't know what it is, but I have a crazy memory with like number plates and that sort of thing. Like, you can just like bring up cars and what's done to them off the number plate. It's really weird. But there's a white 33 GDR that gets around. It's built by 101 Motorsport. And it has an M1 300 sticker on the back window, which means that he's definitely been around for a minute. But it's cool to see that sticker. I guess for people who don't know, it was like a news article, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a news article.
Yeah, and they wrote that there was it was like the Japanese Wangan of Australia.
Yeah,
they were doing 300 km/h runs.
Yeah,
and it really. Like it was a meme before memes.
Yeah, it was a meme before memes.
Yeah,
definitely.
And the article came out, and then everyone sort of ran with it. I don't know if anyone actually was doing 300 runs, but
no, I don't think there would have been many cars.
No.
In the outways that could have pushed through.
No,
that's not a lot of Falcons and Commodores punching like that.
Yeah, now it's basically like mum's SUV can do it.
Yeah, they can all do it, but not then. And like they were just they were really interesting times for the car scene, because it was also before. Before the car scene, we're just sort of broadly painted as criminals.
I still are.
Yeah, but it was probably to a lesser degree because it was more niche.
Yeah.
And I'll show my age here that, I was on it sort of before Fast and the Furious came out, and that was like a turning point for the whole game.
Oh, yeah, that would have been crazy.
Oh, man, like I'm old enough that, I saw the trailers coming for that, and I'm like,
yeah.
And mate, I was at day one, session one, so like 10 a.m. on the Thursday that it came out in the cinema, and watching that back then, as a young man, I was like, oh my God, this is my life now.
This is it. I now identify as a street racer.
I now identify this is my jam, and then
No, that was massive. See, I was like, I knew it was coming out. I watched it in the cinemas, but I was young. Like I would have been, was it 2001? So I would have been 11. And so I didn't have my license, but I liked cars. And even then, it was a massive spark. Like we talk about it, we laugh about it. It's a meme these days. But what that did for cars.
Oh man, for car culture.
And for the car scene. Oh my God.
Because it was just a thing that we did. And I mean, certainly for me, there wasn't anything that our generation identified with. Like people would always point you towards Smokey and the Bandit and these sorts of things, like stuff from the 70s.
Yeah.
It was like just...
Sick car, but
Yeah. But there just wasn't, there wasn't really anything that, particularly the Japanese cars and four-cylinder cars, that I was really interested in. I was always interested in the smaller turbocharged stuff in the 90s, whereas that was really poo-pooed back then. So like Japanese cars, small turbo cars, it was really that JDM versus muscle was very strong.
Import versus domestic.
Yeah, import versus domestic was...
Which is what I think the Americans coined it. But that's kind of... It's the same as me. So like I said, I've always been into cars, and a lot of that's because of my family, because of my parents. Mum's not so much into cars, but she was always been around it. Like her dad and her brother were into cars. And then obviously my dad was into cars. And then her sister's husband, my uncle, he's into cars. So she really just had to, she was like, okay, it's like, he's going to be into cars no matter what. But it was all muscle cars. So when I was growing up, it was all muscle cars. Like my dad's massive into Mustangs. He's got a couple of Mustangs. My pop had Mustang. My uncle he's got a Phase 3 GTHO. When I say that, he didn't pay $1 million for it.
No.
He paid like $5.5 grand for it.
Back when they were a cheap car.
And yeah, like my uncle's got Corvettes. So it was all muscle cars. So growing up, I couldn't tell the difference between, a WRX and a Magna, you know what I mean? Or a normal runaround Mitsubishi. And then it was Fast and Furious, really. And I guess like Need for Speed, and I was of that, I was that age where everything was very like influential to me. And then that came out. And all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, Japanese cars? Like, what is this? And looking at them and thinking back, I remember seeing them on the road. The first Japanese car I ever really loved was a 300 ZX. It's a pretty unloved car these days. Still cool, but...
Still cool, but yeah.
Just started consuming. And it was really... I mean, I don't know about you, but do you ever think about like how we consumed that? Because YouTube was... I don't know, when YouTube came out, 2000...
It was late 00s.
Late 00s, yeah.
Where it became influential.
There was
like
Google.
07, 08.
There was Google Video as well.
Yeah.
But like watching...
Mate, our internet connections weren't fast enough. Video wasn't a thing.
So consuming...
It was pictures.
I think the reason like muscle cars and all that was so prominent back then, they're still big now, but like, to be honest, the scene is nowhere near the size of what you would say the Japanese car scene is.
Yeah, not even close.
But it's because you could consume it back then. Whereas you had Bathurst and you had all your muscle car meets. Whereas Japanese car stuff was almost... And I remember you would find like high-performance import DVD or high-octane DVD with Quetzal Sterling. Like, I don't know if you remember them back in the day.
Sure do.
And of their tours to Japan and all these hallowed workshops. And that just became like... I was just obsessed with it. I feel like I wish I'd liked math the same way I liked Japanese cars, because I would be so much wealthier from it. But, it was crazy. I just wanted to know everything and anything about them. And it was just, I started like learning the workshops and what they were doing. And then it became like a whole, like the wheels, and it just became an obsession. And it still is to this day. But then it's funny because I went through the early 00s in my teens, Japanese cars, late 00s, early 2010s. The most prominent thing in the car scene for like car media was Top Gear. And so then all of a sudden, muscle cars, I don't give a shit about them. Japanese cars, I liked them when I was a teenager. Supercars and European cars, because that was what Jeremy was driving. That's what James was driving. That's what Richard was driving. That's what the cars they were reviewing. Then I just consumed them. And I think that did well for me in terms of like the brand that I have now and the meets that I run now, because I've had this every stage in my life into each variation of car. I like bikes too, but now I like them all. Now that I'm older, I can like them all equally.
Appreciate them.
Yeah, and I know the difference between like an XW and an XY. I can tell you like every color code of the 34 GTR, and then I can tell you every like generation of Porsche 911. It's weird as.
Yeah, we do end up with very unusual knowledge banks of.
Yeah, and it's like sometimes I wish I knew less about cars and more about other crucial pieces of information of life, like
but
tax.
That'd be no fun. Why would you want to know about that? That's really boring.
True.
Because it's so much fun, and I think you and I probably had very similar upbringings where same thing. My old man was into it, and then we were inevitably into it because we just I don't know, just thought it was cool, and like just loved it. And probably the bigger thing, and it's interesting actually listening to sort of how you went through it, because in the 90s. You sort of saw the start of Fast Fours and Rotaries, Hot Fours magazine. So they were sort of coming of age when Street Machine was the king.
Oh yeah,
and that sort of stuff. Like those sort of big dollar big builds were just the king.
Yeah.
And I did a trip recently where I actually found a couple of 90s, like some of the early number 2, number 3, number 4. Of Fast Fours.
Oh wow!
And like it's Dados and Geminis and like really basic.
Yeah, but that's like it's funny because the Australian scene was so Australian. Like I read a lot about what came before me in terms of like I'd say the majority of my favorite cars in the world are cars that would have been popular when I was either not born or like unaware of them. I prefer older cars like you. New stuff doesn't really. Like as we sit here and talk, Porsche just unveiled their new hypercar, the Mission X. Looks great. Couldn't care less about the thing because it's fully EV.
Correct.
But yeah, it's funny how the Japanese scene took off in Australia, and as Australians gravitated towards like the most muscle car variant Japanese cars, like Datsun 1600s and Rotaries, which is like basically a Japanese muscle car in terms of like a grumpy engine and stuff. It's funny how that's kind of like the pillar of the Australian import scene is like Rotaries and old school Jap cars, which are like steel body muscle cars for Japan.
Oh yeah.
Whereas I think the plastic stuff, which I think you're into like I am, which is like your Supras and your Skylines and your Celicas and stuff. Like I love them, but I think it took the Australians a long time to give them credit, like to actually enjoy them.
A long time. They were just considered just laughable.
Yeah. What's the saying?
Mate, milk and juice are the only things that come in 2 litres.
Yeah.
And that, it was a very rebellious time to, be interested in small engined cars because it just, it was not cool.
No.
Like not even a little bit. It was very, very alternate.
Was your dad into...
Mate, my dad's into old stuff as well.
But like muscle cars?
Nah, Jags.
Oh, wow.
So, before Jeremy Clarkson made us go, Jag. And so that was my old man. He bought his first Jag. He bought an XJ6 in the 70s in like that mustard yellow with the red interior.
Oh, yellow and red?
Yeah, man.
Great.
Gangster.
Yeah.
And there's photos of me as a baby, like sitting in the driver's seat holding the thing,
Yeah, that's a...
And he's come home with that thing and, my mum's gone, what's this? And he's like, I bought a Jag.
I bought a Jag, yeah. It's almost like... you can almost call it like masochistic being into Jags and Alphas and stuff. Like,
oh, man. And that's my family. That's my family background is Jags and Alphas. So he had that XJ6, so like a Series 1, and then he bought a Series 2 in 1985, which, we sort of kept forever. They're sort of becoming trendy again, but I think he got $1,000 for it when he sold it 10 years ago. Because, again, they just become a pain in the ass. And I must say, they really ruined British cars for me. Because they're beautiful. Like those Jags are so beautiful.
Most Jags are. Yeah.
Like and it was all the timber interior. Like it was for me, it was the design ethos and the material selection. And again, I didn't understand that stuff back then, but I love the fact that stuff was handmade. Like the timber in it is all like laid sheets of timber that they've done, done by hand. And we actually went as a family when I was young. Dad took us to the Jag factory in, that would have been the early 90s.
Oh, wow.
And we got a little tour there.
Yeah. Oh, would have been cranking back then.
Yeah. So all that's it. These were heydays for it, before the, what was it, the XJ8 and that sort of stuff, like the, really gangster saloon that they brought out.
Well, that was before.
Before Ford bought them.
Would have been around the...
XJ220.
I was going to say 220, like 94, I think the 220 was.
So XJ220 had come out. We've actually got a model XJ220 that we bought from the Jag factory at that time.
It's like the personification of Jaguar.
Mate,
beautiful
the
looking.
greatest thing they ever did.
But what could have been?
What could have been?
What could have been with that car?
Yeah, no, Ford did bad things to Jaguar.
Yeah. Ford did bad things to a lot of manufacturers back then.
Yeah.
Aston Martin,
really
Land Rover. Even though I love Ford, I don't know what they were doing back then. No,
it was a very strange time, and it was terrible looking at a Jag and looking at the interior of the Jag and seeing like Ford Falcon spec radio. I'm there going, ooh.
Yeah, you're like, do people understand what that is?
Do you remember what they used to be like?
Yeah.
They used to be really quite beautiful. But my first car was actually an Alfa Romeo. So like I'm sick and twisted.
Yeah.
So I was a 17-year-old. I had a 1989 Alfa Romeo 33. So they've got a boxer engine in them. Downdraft Webers. And that was like their performance one. So the Cloverleaf. And that was my first car. And like, I love that thing. And it was one of those, screaming 4-cylinder things. But also, it was an Alfa Romeo. So it was always broken. And spent so much money on it and rebuilt everything. And like, that was the car that taught me cars.
Yep.
And I've laughed when years later people have gone, oh, you're not a real enthusiast unless you've owned an Alfa Romeo. And I get that now because they're a fucking nightmare.
They are. Yeah, they legitimately are. I think it's changing. Like I was talking to someone about this the other day because obviously Top Gear were massive, pushing you're not a real car enthusiast if you've never owned an Alfa Romeo, which is true. But I think it's changing now. I think now there's probably a different manufacturer involved in that. You could probably find a different manufacturer that would be that you're not a true enthusiast unless you've owned one.
Yeah.
Sort of.
I think they're too old now. Like that's, and most of them are. Because the reason I ended up getting rid of mine was there used to be a wonderful place called Euro Connection over near the airport. It's a long-term car parking place now.
Yep.
And that family that ran that was sort of the reason that I was able to keep that car for so long because they ran a European wreckers. So they would wreck old cars and I'd go in there and go, oh, good, yeah, I lost my side skirt. I need another one of these.
Yep.
Oh, you got an interior, mate. I'll buy that interior and put that into my car. And so there was a constant, roll of parts and all that sort of stuff that they would just have. And I could go there on a Saturday morning and like go and stock up and buy parts and get stuff and tell them to keep an eye out for things and they'd find me wheels or whatever because it was really hard to buy that stuff back then because you couldn't just jump on eBay and go, I want a set of rims. Like I needed, Euro spec because I ended up putting suspension and things into it and, trying to put Bilsteins and things into a car back in the early 00s was very difficult.
Yeah, I can't imagine like even modifying cars back then. Obviously, I came into the late 00s, which was still difficult, but things like eBay and like Yahoo auctions, which is massive for anyone who likes Japanese cars.
It's so good. Like anything you want. I couldn't find a tow hook to fit on my Land Cruiser, and one of my mates had one on his, and so I used Google Lens, and Google Lens looked at the part number and then showed me the part.
Yep.
And so I went from taking a photo of it to pushing buy, and then it'll turn up at my house. Whereas back then, like finding the part was like an unfathomable mission.
Yep.
And you'd spend days at the wreckers, like just crawling through.
100%. But it's still, I think, like as an overarching statement, that is like a crux of the car scene today. Is it's so easy to just buy things, and people there's like no appreciation, and I'm a big proponent for. Anyone who knows me or follows me knows I'm massive on like genuine parts, quality builds, like quality over quantity, like massively. I understand that kids coming up don't have any money. It's hard to afford genuine parts, but I was also there. I bought my first set of wheels. I had a triplet. My first car was a Triple S Pulsar N15. Nice. 99 model charcoal. It was sick. SR20.
SR20, yeah.
And like having grown up on like Japanese culture and just like consuming best motoring and hot version and Keiichi Tsuchiya was like my hero. It was like I was only buying Japanese parts for the car. And I bought my first set of wheels, which was a set of T37s. But I just found them cheap online, and you can still get them cheap, but it's just the access that people have to other parts. It's not even a thing that they're not buying replica stuff on purpose. It's just like a non-educational thing, like we were talking about before we turned the mics on. what do kids do to consume information these days?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
there's no forums to like read about like what someone. I mean, they do still exist. You can read about it.
But it's harder to get there. It's mainly whatever you're being fed by
on TikTok, Instagram,
by the algorithms.
YouTube, and like YouTube's great, and there's all these YouTube content creators. And as someone who consumes a lot of car information, I can't watch half of them because the majority of their content is just them talking about themselves.
Yeah.
Like it's great. All these like super YouTube guys, it's great what they're doing and making this content so we can, you know, you got Daily Driven Exotics are showing us and modifying cars that we never thought anyone would ever modify, but they're doing it in like a really wanker fashion.
Yes.
And it's the same with like in the drifting. You got like Adam LZ, and look, I'm sure they're probably great guys, but at this point they're putting on a persona for their followers. And they're not contributing like detailed information that a forum would have done. You know, you could go on a forum, you read about someone's build. That's a crazy part. You could see a car you like, be like, oh, what are those taillights? Boom, go on there.
Oh,
He
yeah.
mentions
Like a
them.
build thread.
Oh, man.
Doesn't that take you back? Holy crap. Like, as you were saying that,
Yeah.
I had memories of build threads that I followed where people would, like, do the thing in the garage, take a photo, upload it to the internet, and, like, that was this week's update.
Yeah, and it was awesome. And I guess you could say Instagram is that too. But a lot of people, like, it's, like, almost like hiding that information. They don't, like, they won't. You have to go through the hashtags and go back to when they bought it and try and find it. It's not like a multi-page thread.
No, where you keep coming back to it and the threads would go and, you know, they'd 99 pages and you could follow the things all the way through and all the discussions.
Yeah, CSS, you can get the updates.
Yeah, and it was slow. I think that was probably the other thing, was that it all happened.
Well, parts were slower.
Over a far extended duration. Whereas, we could order a bit now and it'll be at our house tomorrow.
Yeah.
Which is just weird. Like, I'm actually waiting for some base plates at the moment because I'm doing up an E36.
Oh, the Vert.
Yeah, sick car.
Yeah.
The base plates are coming from Europe, and mate, they're on the slow boat, and it feels like the olden days. Because I'm like, do you know when they get here? And they're like,
yeah, they don't know
when the boat gets here.
Well, I think that happened to. It was crazy watching that unfold during COVID.
Yeah, man,
it was nuts. Like, we are very used to having grown up. You know, I was at the later end of it. There was technology involved in modifying cars when I first got into it, but it was still like buying things off Yahoo Japan was crazy. You just had this random email address, which was Jesse Streeter's email address before he was Jesse Streeter. And it was like Dartson79 or something like that. And you would just email him and you'd have to wait for an email to come back, and you'd email him a link to a Yahoo auction site and you'd have to have translated it yourself. I had a mate who was Japanese who would help me, but you'd use like some dodgy translator, and then you'd tell him the bid, and then you'd just be waiting, and you'd eventually get an email back, be like, hey, no, it didn't work. What about these ones? And it's like an email. It's not like Messenger where it's like boop, 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 constant conversation. You'd be sending emails on Hotmail.
Yeah, you're just waiting.
And just waiting for something to come through. And so things would take a long time. I remember buying tail lights and wheels and brakes and all that sort of stuff off Yahoo. And then COVID hit, and like everyone was used to how much faster things are. And then COVID hit, and shipping and all that became a massive nightmare. And wait times blew out, and proper blew out. And I remember, like, I bought full circle, bought a set of T37s for my car, and they just discontinued that generation of T37, and I wanted to get in before they were. I don't like the new style, and I think I waited 14 months for them, which I was. Growing up, I was used to waiting, 6-7 months for parts. 14 months was a stretch, but 6-7 months. But seeing people, especially kids, like young kids, teenagers, early 20s, not understanding that they had to wait a month for wheels, or like a month for a wing, or 3 months for wheels, and just blowing up about it. I'm not going to wait this long. That's what we grew up on. Like, you can't just get everything now. Like, welcome to the real world.
Yeah, we've been ruined.
Yeah, pretty much.
By these glorious conditions that are offered to us.
Yeah, like at the point where you can get things from overseas. At one point, you could get things from overseas faster than you could get them from Sydney.
Yeah, I recall that. I was getting stuff from the States.
Yeah,
faster
like
than
Ozpost was slower than DHL out of, Kentucky. It was lunacy.
Yeah, which doesn't really make any sense.
That actually, like, logistically makes no sense whatsoever, but it was happening. And then COVID hit, and it changed. All of a sudden, everyone was taking ages, and freight went like apocalyptic. Freight was massive. You basically couldn't get anything in for cheap anymore. And it was funny seeing the pushback on the car scene, because I think there's less people building cars for themselves. This is a very deep comment, but there's less people building cars for themselves these days than there are people building cars for their followers.
I guarantee you that's the only reason that people do it now.
Yeah, and it would be a massive, like, compared to back in the day, it would be almost flipped. Back in the day, it might have been, 15 to 20% of people would build cars for other people's appreciation. Now it would be 15 to 20% would be building it for themselves.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Because that is, the even the comment of like the e-fame stuff and people
clout chasers.
there you go, clout chasers. I'm not even cool enough to have the words. But people who, that's their whole identity.
Oh, yeah.
Is the persona that they give the car. Because and one that springs to mind is there's that, it's a blue.
I was like, I guarantee he's going to talk about, thick 8.6.
Yeah, that one. Because, that's probably, if I had to look up in the dictionary, e-fame vehicle, and, I don't know the person, I don't know, I've never even seen the car.
Yep.
But I see that car pop up on the internet and it looks, it's very clearly structured. The content that is being made for
100%
attention on the internet.
Yep.
Which, look, I get it, but I also don't get it.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much the exact same. Like, I get it in the sense where, like, I run a social media. Like, my technical whole brand is based off social media. Like, I get the push for social media and what it can do for business, what it can do for your future prospect, what it can do for everything. But building a car for social media is like, it doesn't reverberate with me well, because I'm so ingrained in car culture. Like, why would you build a car for the community? And it's that demand that your community, especially when you get followers, that demand that community wants from you. Like, I know so many people who always talk about, Adam LZ's living the dream. Cletus McFarlane's living the dream. All these guys, these massive YouTubers, they're living the dream. They get to build all these cool cars. They don't have a job. I don't think anyone even has this faintest idea of how difficult what they do is. Like, there's no off switch. If they stop and take time off, people losing their mind, absolutely losing their mind. They people want to consume their content every single day. And then it becomes to the point where you no longer are building a car for yourself. You're just building cars for the sake of...
That's your job now.
...content, which is cool, but then they say never turn your hobby into a job. It's not really true. It's never turn your hobby into a monotonous job. If you're just constantly buying and building cars for the sake of, I don't know, all your followers, and it's your livelihood. I mean, to be honest, if they gave it up, they wouldn't have a job. They've made plenty of money, but you just see them and it's like they've got a garage of 50 cars. The reason they have a garage of 50 cars is because they have to, once one car's finished, they can't just say, oh yeah, I'm just going to chill now. You know what I mean?
No, I'm going to
go to the
What's
Maldives with the missus. Yeah. No, the people are like, okay.
What's next?
The chase is done. So what's next? S15. Oh, the S15's done. What's next? Oh, okay, I'm going to build a quad rotor A90 Supra. Okay. Yeah, that's done. What's next?
Yeah, and it never ends.
No. And then people don't even care now about the builds on how crazy people go. They're like, oh yeah, bang, boom, done. Who cares?
Yeah,
that's done.
On to the next one. Keep entertaining me.
I watched a video only a couple of nights ago, and it was Top Gear on YouTube made a video about the Bugatti Chiron, the Super Sport, which is one of the world's fastest cars. And they took it to the space shuttle's landing strip to do like a big top speed run. Not to break any records, but they just wanted to use it. And the presenter, was talking about how everyone was so obsessed with the Veyron, the Bugatti Veyron when it came out. It was this fastest car in the world and broke 250 mile an hour, 400 kilometers an hour, and everyone was just consuming maximum information about it. Even now, people are still obsessed with that car. The Chiron's way faster than it. No one talks about it. And he used the reference, this is one of the best references I've ever seen, the moon landing, first moon landing. Apparently it was viewed by 650 million people in, 69, I think it was. And in America, they recorded that 96% of televisions had it on the TV. 96% of TVs
Mad.
in America. That's crazy. We didn't land on the moon just the one time. We landed on it, I think, 3 or 4 times. No one watched the other ones. So as humans, we literally consume something. Oh, yeah, cool. Who cares?
Yeah.
Oh, we went back to the moon? Who cares?
Whatever. Done that.
Yeah.
Not cool.
Yeah. Bugatti broke the speed record. Or Bugatti are trying again. I don't care. I watched the first Bugatti do it, which is basically, and then Instagram and TikTok exacerbated that by like tenfold. Now you can just consume information like at the speed of sound, pretty much.
And so much variation. And so much, because you're looking at the whole world instantaneously in fractions of a second.
Yeah, in 10-second videos, bang, 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 bang. You're not learning anything, you're not doing anything. Oh, I've seen that video. Yeah, I've done that. I've seen that car. Like, nothing is special.
No. Whereas you go back to the build threads, and I felt like I got to know the person and I got to know the car because I was invested in it for, months and years,
but then you
potentially.
see the car when you go to something and you see the car.
Yeah.
And it's this massive moment, and you spend like, I use social media, so I take a lot of photos, I take a lot of videos. I'm always posting on social media to try and get engagement and do all that sort of jazz. But when I see something cool, like a car that I've been following for ages, even on Instagram, obviously build threads don't exist, or it's a car that it's an iconic car that stands out, whether it's a supercar or a special GDR or something, I will spend time with the car, looking at it, looking over the bits and pieces. Oh, that's really cool and that. And I see like the kids coming up today, especially like car spotters, and it's all just, okay, I've spotted that, what's next? Okay, and the cars they're spotting, like these kids will see some crazy cars.
Yeah, some of those ones that come out of Melbourne, some of the things I've seen there are like, man, that's stuff you should never, like, I'm astonished that they get seen on the road.
And people, these kids, like, there's a bunch of them in Brisbane. They're awesome kids, and I love chatting to them because I was once like that. I was once that passionate. And I love, like, interacting with them and talking to them. I don't like the idea that they'd message someone, that person would leave them on scene. You know what I mean? Because these are kids that just want to be excited about cars.
Yeah, absolutely. They're just,
but they're also social media kids. They're that social media generation. These kids, it's crazy. Some of these kids that I'm talking to were born in like 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
Which is
crazy.
When they tell me that.
You're like, whoa.
I'm like 90% of my favorite cars outdate you.
Correct.
And talking to them about it, and they'll spot something nuts because they're all obsessed with supercars. They don't care about anything else. They just care about supercars. And they'll spot something crazy that no one else has spotted before, and they'll post it up, and it'll be like the best thing ever. And then they're kind of like done with that car. And they're just like, oh, whatever. I've seen one of them. And I was like, man, when I was growing up, like you would never see Ferraris and Lambos, for one. In the 90s,
No.
When would you ever see a Diablo?
You just didn't.
They did not exist.
No. Like, there'd be car club meets.
Yep.
Are the only place you'd see stuff like that.
And even then, you'd never know when they were on.
No.
Like, I remember growing up, never saw, apart from maybe like motor shows, never saw Diablos, never saw Countachs, never saw 355s.
No, man, they were posters that you had.
Yeah.
Like, because you never saw them. They weren't real. They didn't exist. You never,
Like in the 90s, through the 90s, F40, F50, probably the two biggest hero cars of the 90s for
massive.
sure. Everyone's wall, my wall, everyone included. They would be like the current, like there's hypercars that are like the current versions of those today. And these kids, I never, as a kid, even in my teens, I don't think I ever saw a F40 or F50. If I did, I would have genuinely had a meltdown as a kid. Now, one just goes past. Because there's more affluent people, there's more big cars around.
And there's more of them around. But the first time I saw an F40, I raced in an event that only happened once, Suncoast Classic. That was, so they were trying to do like a Tag of Tasmania thing.
Oh, yeah.
And so Scott Robinson, who was on the podcast, he and I were in that. So he was the driver because he's got actual talent, and I was the navigator. I'm still not sure how I got that job.
You had the Refidex.
Yeah, mate, I had the Refidex, and I'm just there going, and he's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But mate, there was an F40 that was entered in that, and I still I have the most vivid memory of that car, and I'm just sitting there just staring in awe of this thing because I'd never seen one in the flesh. They're so low, they're so wide, they're so loud. And the dude that owned it, I remember they started his stage and he just laid throttle into it. And I remember these massive tyres just kicking stuff up. And I'm like that was a moment.
Yeah.
You know, that was a real moment.
No phone out, nothing.
No, mate, I think I probably had a BlackBerry.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah. That's what I mean. Like, I like the idea that I can film things and take pictures of things for me to look at later. Yeah, I'm going to post them up. Of course, I'm going to post them.
It's the job.
But if I was to really break down what my Instagram is, it's literally like a catalog that I can go back to and I can reference. I do it quite a lot. It's getting a lot harder because I've got 5,000 something posts to go back and be like, oh, I remember that car. Where did I see that? Bang, go back through. Oh, that's when I spotted such and such. But now it's just, that stuff is just passed on. And I'm very fortunate now that being obsessed with cars and that sort of thing, I've made a lot of friends who are, I guess you could say, like affluent or very well off, who have very, very cool car collections and are like genuine guys, proper car nuts who've made good money in their life and have bought cool cars and kind of want to share them with people that they get along with. They like to stay secretive, which is a whole other kettle of fish with these car spotters, because these car spotters want names and details of all these guys' cars, which is nuts. They shouldn't have access to that sort of stuff. But but yeah, now, like, I have a friend of mine, and his family have an F40 amongst a few other cars. And I know a couple of people who have F40s. So I've been around a fair few now recently, especially in the last 5 or 6 years. Still massive. Like, even when I see one, even though I've seen them quite frequently now, I would say they're a frequent car. They're actually not that rare, which is a crazy thing about them.
That is kind of crazy.
Yeah, they're pretty. They made a lot of them, which is nuts. But I still see one, and it's still a moment. It's still a massive moment. I do not take for granted one bit being in the presence of that car. It is nuts. I would liken it to being in the presence of Michael Jordan or something like that. Like being in the presence of an F40.
Yeah, it's like Catholic going to see the Pope. Like we're there and we bow down.
Yeah.
Because that was just the pinnacle.
It is. It is still is to me. It's F50s are a lot rarer.
Yeah.
I haven't seen many of them.
I'd still rather an F40. I just think there's something about them. They're so aggressive.
Yep.
The wedge. You'd never seen anything like it.
See, that's one of the coolest parts about cars. One of my favorite parts about cars is like the divisive moments. Because there's things that are like divisive between people. Like, do you prefer this or do you prefer that? Are you a Lambo guy or a Ferrari guy? There's a famous meme. It's like, I'm a Porsche guy. With Ferraris, it's, are you an F40 guy or an F50 guy? And it's hard for me because the F40 for sure is the looks. It's got the looks covered because it looks just, like you said, man, it's so wide. It's so low slung. So square and boxy and staunch. It just looks aggressive. The F50 for me would be like probably one of the best drives. I can't even fathom what it would be like to drive one. Like manual, V12, F1 engine. Like,
as good as it gets.
Yeah. Like they would just tide me over then, like put me in my grave after that.
Stick a fork in me, I'm done.
Yeah. That's just and it's one of those things where I know when you start talking about, I don't know about you in terms of cars, but as I get older I start to realise that I'm a car enthusiast, but I might be more so of a driving enthusiast because the cars that I like them for the drivability. I don't really care about what they're like when they're parked up. Like, I don't care what someone thinks if I park a car at like the Khalil Hotel. You know what I mean? I don't care about like
the clout.
Yeah, the clout. Like, I would much rather an EK9 Civic Type R over a Ferrari 488, like all day, every day. Like, not even, obviously remove the monetary factor out of it because if you give me the 488, I'll sell it and buy something else. But yeah, that's when it comes back to the clout thing. Like, a lot of people are just doing stuff for public perception. And it's now more prevalent than we've ever seen it. It's mental how consumed people are by like what their image is. And then people they throw it on tick and they're like massively in debt. Trying to flex on Instagram.
Well, and oddly, I mean, that was done in the auto salon days as well, where people had, $100,000 sunk into a car that they've borrowed and like they have no money. They don't have a job that allows them to pay it back. But like they were the original clout hunters.
Yep.
was having an auto salon, Hot Fours cover car.
Yeah, but back then you get a trophy.
Yeah, you get a trophy. But again, you're just in debt for it. And it's not like, again, that wasn't for you.
No.
I mean, kind of maybe. But it was to have that recognition.
Yeah, and they've always existed. Like clout, the word clout hasn't always existed. But
that style of build.
That style of person and that style of car builder has always existed.
Oh, absolutely.
They've always been there. We probably know plenty of them ourselves. But now it's almost like everyone coming up through it.
Well, it's kind of the job, isn't it? And this was a really interesting turning point for me, and COVID sort of had a lot to do with it as well. Was I was looking, I'm a middle-aged man now, and I needed a four-wheel drive because we had a RAV4 and I wanted to be able to go off-road.
Yeah.
And I took a RAV4 to Bribey, and I would advise not to do that.
Oh.
Make sure you got big boy cars with you as well, because I got a bogged 3 times, but absolutely sent it and did pretty well. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I need a proper high clearance.
Yeah.
So I went and did what a middle-aged man does, and I went to Toyota and I pointed at the Prado and I said, all right, better go and test drive that. And mate, I drove it, and my precise memory, and I've actually heard it said more recently, was I said I might as well have been driving a refrigerator. It felt like white goods. And
man, that is proper spot on.
Yeah. And the worst part was like, I know that this is a great car. I know that it'll handle anything you throw at it. I know that it's bulletproof. But the driving experience for me sucked so bad because I felt nothing.
Yep.
I felt no connection to the car. I just, it's the same as driving. I drove a Tesla, I think yesterday I was driving a friend's Tesla, and I feel nothing.
Yep.
I get zero joy, and that deceleration thing when you come off the throttle. It goes,
the one brake, the no brake pedal thing.
Yeah, and it slows down. I'm like, this is just gross.
Yeah.
I don't like it at all. And I even find the acceleration feeling really unpleasant. It's fast and it's impressive and it's cool. But, man, nothing in this world beats for me. For me, it's the whole car. Mm-hmm. And I think you're the same. It's the symphony. It's, it's the engine. It's the gearbox. It's the steering. It's the noise. It's the look. It's the vibe. And if it doesn't have that,
you call it soul.
Mate, exactly. Like the car had no soul. That Prado. And that was the point where, because prior to that, I was kind of a bloke, had his own business and trying to, do the things that, a person trying to look or be successful, buy the nicer car and the nicer thing. And I don't know, I sort of hit that point where I realized that all of this just sucks. And it's not what I want. It's what I'm being told I want. And I actually don't even want these things.
No, I don't even want that. Yeah.
I don't want them.
No.
Because I reached a point where I could have them. And then I'm like, I don't even care anymore. Like, I don't even want this stuff. And that was when I went, well, what do I do want? And, what I ended up wanting was a loud, old, slow, inefficient 60 Series Land Cruiser.
Yeah.
Because when I drive that car, oh man, the noise, and you can hear the turbo spooling, and you're punching soot out the back,
but also the looks.
Oh man, it's so cool.
Like how it looks, yeah.
I think it's so cool. And when I showed people, and when I showed my wife was like, "You are not buying that." She's like, "Absolutely not." Yeah. And
you're like, "Whoops."
Well, because it had
I've already bought it.
Had just under 500,000 kilometres on it.
Oh yeah,
and
okay.
Even my brother was like, "What is wrong with you?" Like, he's like, "Why?
Yeah.
Why would you do this?" But it's precisely that I just realised I don't like cars with electronics in them.
No,
I don't dig it. I get it.
Yeah, 100%.
And I love what it's done, but I don't feel anything.
No, same.
And I need that.
Yeah,
and there'll be a generation that grows up like only knowing Teslas and stuff. And,
that's the current gen.
We'll be the old dinosaurs
Yep.
that like loud, noisy, inefficient, stupid cars.
Yeah, but I feel like, that's what I said before, like these kids growing up, they just want the latest and greatest and the newest.
Yeah.
They want to see the newest supercar, the newest hypercar, what's fastest, blah, blah, blah. But like I was born in the 90s. And you know what I mean? I love like 80s cars. I love 70s cars. I love 60s cars. I love all those cars, especially like 60s Ferraris and that sort of thing. Big fan of the old school Porsches. They all outdate me.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're a kid coming up, I don't understand how you could be so obsessed with these tech-based cars. And it might come down to the fact that they just haven't experienced an analog car, which is my thing. Because
good chance.
I've now been very fortunate with friends and also like business like ties and that sort of thing that I've driven a very large share of the majority of, like, I guess, people's dream cars these days. And they're not. Like, I'm sorry to break it to anyone who's obsessed with, you know, owning a Huracan or owning a, you know, an F8 Tributo or the new Ferraris and stuff like that. It's not.
And that's the worst part.
They're not. They're like, it's, I would happily have something older.
But what you discover, and see, I'm fortunate that I've had similar opportunity where I've driven most stuff, and the only things that brought me joy was like a 1985 911, with a whale tail, and
like a 930,
and a flat six screaming out the back like that. Yeah, that gets me going. But like driving, you know, brand new top end stuff. Yeah. I actually found that to be a really lonely experience. I actually found, like, I was in a Ferrari going down the M1, and you're chatting to the person next to you, and then you realise outside the car there's people just staring at the car.
At the car, yeah.
And that's a really odd feeling, and it's actually not one that I enjoy.
No, and that's I guess that's the adversary to the cloud chaser, is you're interested in cars for, and while you're driving this new modern, you know, tech-based vehicle, whether it's a new Ferrari, whether it's a new Lamborghini, or the Porsches, with their credit, are still reasonably analog, and still quite enjoyable.
They're trying.
They're trying. They're holding it down. You just, like, they become, like, to me, a supercar should not be able to convert into a daily driver with ease. You should be able to do it, you know, Fun Car Friday or something, where you take the cool car out. But, you know, one of my best mates, he had a Huracan, and he sort of bought it on a whim, I guess. You know, kind of the way he said it to me was he bought it just around the time where we started, like, hanging out, becoming mates. And he said he bought it because he always wanted to tick that off the bucket list. Like, I've owned a Lamborghini. You know what I mean? And he bought it. And it was, I drove it as well. I've driven a bunch of other ones. The Huracan is probably the ideal example of it. They're an awesome car. They can do everything. You could easily daily drive it. When you put it into, like, when you turn it onto the, I think, Strata, I can't even remember. I'm probably going to get shredded by anyone who watches this about that. But, and open it up, engine sounds like crazy. The gear shifts, the bangs, the pops and crackles. And it's great. It's awesome. And then you go in something that's from, like, the 2000s. Like, you go in Diablo or a 355 Ferrari.
Yeah, man. They feel like
which
they're
are like
half
half the
you.
price.
Yeah.
And the noise is absolutely visceral.
Yeah.
And they're not easy to drive.
They're very hard.
You're looking at everything, making sure you're not blowing anything up.
Correct.
Analog manual gearbox, gated shifter, crazy. Correct. And then it all comes in perspective. You're like, oh, yeah, the Huracan's a great car. It was awesome. You could live with it. It looked great outside of a hotel. But if you're waking up on a Sunday morning at 4 a.m. to do a dawn raid, there is not a single chance that you are taking that over anything else, especially anything manual. Like even modified cars. Like, it's what I think a lot of people, you know, it's pretty scary to think about, that modified cars are becoming, because all the cool cars we used to modify are getting very expensive.
Oh yeah, they're not, all the stuff we liked is out of the game now.
Like, that's becoming,
they're $50,000+ cars. Like,
the very heavily modified cars are becoming a bit more of a rarity. And I feel like I just want to grab these kids that are coming up through, like, take them under my wing and be like, all right, yeah, you know, that new 812 super fast Ferrari that you just went for a ride in, great. Now go in this 1,000 horsepower GDR and experience what you should experience in a car of that caliber. And that's literally shitting yourself. Like, absolutely fearing. Like, I like the idea of driving a car and fearing the car. There's a massive dislike.
And I think you're spot on there. I think that's one of the things I've always enjoyed about the older cars was you had to know what you were doing. Yeah. Otherwise they will kill you. Like, you will die. And because they were very hard to control, and you really had to know the car, and you had to get to know its quirks, how it needed to be started, you know.
Yeah, warm-up periods,
let
all
it
that
come
sort
up
of stuff.
to temperature.
Yeah.
Actually, I was teaching my wife how to start my Land Cruiser the other day, and I'm like, right, first thing you got to do is you pull out the choke, and it's got the thing where you got to warm the
Like the glow plugs.
yeah.
Yeah.
And she's like, what the she's like, what is a choke?
Yeah.
And I'm there explaining to her, and she's like, but why does it need that? And I'm like, look, you just don't understand.
Yeah, just do it.
Just do it, and then you got to wind it off and all these things. But like, I love that process.
Oh, yeah.
I love the process, and I'm fully obsessed with it to the point where, like, you know, when you get rental cars and stuff, or like, yeah, you just jump in them. Like, I just,
yeah.
It's so shit. Whereas, like, that's my dream to have something that you've got to always, you know, put the effort into, get to know it, make friends with the car.
Yeah.
You know, that was always my big thing was you had to,
like,
you had to know the car.
Like, you can almost hark it back to like Memphis Reigns. And
Oh yeah. That's exactly
he's
it.
talking to it. He's like,
yeah, you got to get to know the car.
treating it right. Yeah.
Because that was how, if you didn't treat it right, then they would also, because the car would get angry at you if you didn't do the right thing.
Play up. Yeah. Well,
Totally.
I've got an E92 M3.
Yeah.
The V8 ones. And they have a whole, like any of the old BMWs, they got a lot of headaches. But yeah, like if I don't daily drive it, I can't imagine anyone would daily drive them these days. If they did, they got deep pockets. But when I drive it, I've got to put 10 minutes aside for the car to warm up. You know what I mean? It's got to get to, in my head, it's got to get to a certain point because I know they've got to warm up correctly. I don't even slightly get into the thing until it's fully, completely warm. Like it's entirely well run in. It's probably a 15-minute drive before I'm even getting into the thing. And it's taking it easy, and then it's like also like you miss a gear, you're like, fuck, and then the gearbox feels kind of notchy. But when you drive it, like
that's the best, man. An M3, like the M cars are probably one of the cars that I'm most inspired by. Like I'm obviously 80s and 90s.
Yep.
To me, the world peaked at the E39 M5. To me, that was the pinnacle of, you know, analog car, had a bit of digital, had just beautiful style.
Yeah.
Like and there was none of the, you know, all the things that they've got to build into cars now with the pedestrian protection and all the reasons we can't have pop-up headlights and all the cool stuff. To me, it was one of those sort of very last cars that still had, you know, the best of the old world, some really good stuff from the new world, but was just so stupid.
Yeah.
Like manual V8, 4-door, and when I finally got the chance to drive one of those, it was actually everything I ever hoped it would be.
Most M cars are. There's an unfortunate one that is a very difficult topic that I feel doesn't.
Hit me with it. Which one?
E30 M3.
E30 M3. I've driven a few of those. They're just slow.
That's what I mean.
They're so slow. That
and they're
four-cylinder.
They're expensive now. So if you're driving one, it needs to be someone you know well, so you can be like, hey, I'm going to rape this thing.
Yeah.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, you got to strangle them, because I drove them back when they were still cheap cars.
Yep.
And, you know, had the opportunity to flog them around and take them out on club runs and stuff because you just didn't care back then. People were like, oh, what's that? I'm like, whatever. Like, no one cared.
No.
Couldn't care less. There was no clout in driving an E30 M3. Zero people were impressed.
Yeah.
And I was horrified at how slow it was.
It's crazy.
Horrified.
Crazy slow.
Because it's like not fun slow.
Dogleg too, like dogleg gearbox is real abstract for a 4-cylinder. But when you're into it in the hills and you're pedaling it.
And you're right at limiter.
Hill and toe and stuff, it feels great. But I think if that's your hero car and you haven't driven one,
you'll be horribly disappointed.
Yep. Same with
any
GDR that is stock. Is going to be that's probably the biggest. An R32, 33, 34 GDR stock, if it's your hero car, which they are for me. 34 GDR is probably one of my biggest hero cars. Stock for stock, and you drive it. It's a fucking big letdown, but it's because we grew up just watching all the videos you watch on 34 GDRs. You rarely watch videos of stock ones getting driven around.
You're watching Top Secret and
you're smoking a Garda and stuff like that. And KG Suchiya, which
Yeah.
whipping 700 horsepower ones. So you're expecting it to crack gate, smash off limiter, to be like all over the road. When you drive one of those ones, you're like, oh, okay, yeah. This is why GDRs are cool. But stock, not so much. I think the E30 falls into that. Whereas E36s, they had bigger engine, more torque. They're a great.
The 6-cylinder.
Yeah.
They're so cool.
And then I have an E92, but I think my icon is the E46. That's probably my hero, M3. I just think like the shape, the size, the style, the driving nature, the noise when you open the throttle bodies up and put an intake on them. That's peak. They're expensive cars to own now.
And this is the crazy thing, and this is what I find really weird, is I've lived through the period of time where, before car collecting became a thing as well. Yeah. And that's something that still blows me away because, we just buy old cars because they were cool. Or we thought they were cool. Because I still remember the time where you were buying 911s for 20 grand. Yep. And like if it was a 911 SC, nobody would buy it because they thought they were a turd. But like nobody wanted them. Like Porsches were a wanker's car and nobody had them. Like they were not cool. And I'm still astonished at how, that all turned a corner and became cool.
It was almost like it wasn't just COVID. It was definitely pre-COVID. It was starting.
Oh yeah.
Probably would have been mid 2010s, I'd say.
Yeah.
I was the same. You would have it worse than me for sure, but I was definitely the same. Like I remember E46 M3s being 25 grand.
Yeah, and like
as a factor in.
If you drove one of those, people were like, are you poor or something?
Get the new one.
Yeah, why do you have that? Because there was no concept of collecting the older car.
No,
you just threw them out.
Well, there was the whole mantra. Growing up as a car person, why would you spend money on a car? You're never going to make that back. Why would you spend that much money on an old car? You're going to lose money on it. You buy...
Yeah, you never made money on cars.
You buy a brand new 911, doesn't matter if it's a special GT 911, drive out the driveway, lose 50 grand.
Yeah, it's all gone.
Now, make 100 grand.
Yeah.
Which is...
I've never seen...
I don't understand either.
No.
Like, I distinctly remember a guy I know, he's a friend of mine, mainly through mutual friends, but I definitely interact with him a fair bit. His name's Arif. He has a story where he imported like 3 or 4 32 GTRs in like the 00s in the 2000s. Tried to sell them on Boost Cruising. He had them listed for like 8 to 10 grand. And they weren't dog shit. They were still reasonable examples. And he couldn't move them.
No.
Ended up selling them. I think he said he broke even or like made a loss or something.
So bad.
Now.
Yeah. Oh man, they're $100,000+ cars. Yeah. Like for a 32 GTR.
Oh, you're not going to pay under 60.
No.
But for a mint one, for like a V-spec, it's 90, 100 grand.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of 32 GTRs. And by a lot, I mean, they made 42,000 of them.
There's plenty of them out there, but they're just... And again, because nobody cared about them.
Yeah.
And it was the same...
It was all the next one. But then 33s, they were 20 grand. 34s were 40-ish.
Yeah, they held up a little bit. Yeah, I think they bottomed at about 40, where you could buy a mint 34.
But they're the crazy one.
Yeah.
Because, they bottomed at 40 and 32s bottomed at 10.
Yeah.
But 34 GTRs have boomed.
Oh, they've gone to the moon.
I can't even think of another car.
No, that's exploded like that.
That has exploded.
Because nobody cared. No. That was the thing. Like, here's a crazy story for you. I think it was 07 or 08 or thereabouts. I actually worked for Nismo. And we had a decked out 34 GTR.
Yep.
And so it had Nismo everything on it, like had the catalogue tipped into it. And I used to take it home and take it on car runs and just like burn around in it. And people just thought it was weird. And it's still astonishing. And again, that car got sold for about 40 grand.
40 grand,
undesirable.
You definitely need to send me pictures of that car.
Oh, yeah. I've got a picture of me wearing a Santa suit hanging out the door. Like, it was that sort of car where it was just like, oh, okay, some weird Japanese thing. No, like, nobody cared. But that was actually the first GTR I'd ever got to drive. And, like, I'd just be taking it home on the weekends. And I still remember getting on the freeway in that car and opening it up because it obviously made a bit of noise.
Yeah.
And hearing those twin turbos wind up as you're hitting the on-ramp and just as it came on, I never understood GTRs until I drove that car, and I'm like, holy shit, this is a really special car.
This is a really special car, yeah.
Yeah. And
that's 34 GTRs, I would say, would probably be, in terms of like getting pigeonholed, that would be like the car for me. Like I now know like crazy information about them. I like to follow like all the special models. I know a ridiculous amount of information about 34 GTRs. It's not my number one hero car, but it would be like my achievable hero car. It's always just been out of reach though. As I've made more money, they just got more and more expensive.
Yeah.
When they were 40 grand, that was like a limit for me.
You'll have to have a look at this. A friend of mine, Mark Hocking, gave me, so that Skyline GTR book, that's actually an original factory, like an original showroom book.
Yeah, it's not going to be there when I leave.
Yeah, so that's an original Japanese one that he brought.
No, that's awesome.
From when he lived there.
But yeah, the boom that they've experienced, and I get certain models booming. But like you said, there was a period in time they were always special to see because they weren't a common car.
No, they were not. Like, they were still a hero car, but only they were a hero car to a teeny tiny niche community.
Yeah.
That
it was
hung out
just the
on
JDM
Bruce
guys.
Cruising. Yeah. They were like, oh, that's sick. And everybody else was like, oh, Jap crap, whatever.
And now with my Cousin Coffee meets, with the Northshore meets, the 34 GDRs, like,
oh, man.
There is very few, like, very fortunate, spend a lot of time trying to, what's the term? Like, cultivate some of Brisbane's best cars and get cars out of the woodwork that people haven't seen or won't see very often, and that because I give them a curated parking area where they can park. 34 GDRs, there is not many cars that really carry the weight of a high-end 34 GDR. I'm talking a rare colour.
Oh, the presence of one of those. Like,
massive now. They've become, they are like the, I guess, like the young modern generation F40.
Yep. And like a V-Spec Nur or something, like something special, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah. And now when you see that Nur badge, or you see a Midnight Purple or a Millennium Jade or a Silica Brass, it's like, oh shit, like that's not only is that rare as hell and that everyone now knows they're rare, that's a mega dollar car. Talking Nurs at $400,000-500 grand. And that's crazy. Like, I just got back from GDR Festival.
Oh, yeah.
And Andrew Hawkins, who I'm sure you know.
Certainly do.
He puts on, I like the idea of that I pull some cars out that a lot of people aren't doing, but he, in terms of GDRs, the man.
Oh, he's the king. That's the thing. He's OG. He was GDRing and JDMing when nobody else was.
And he pulled some cars out that I was like genuinely impressed by. He had one of each colour of the Australian delivered 32s. So there's only 100 of them. They're uglier than the normal ones, but yeah, he had one of each colour of them, and then he had like a bunch of all the rare colours. And the funny part is getting real GDR nerd, but I don't even know if you're aware of this. The funny part with 34 GDRs is they weren't sold anywhere else. So 32s were sold in Australia, 100 of them. 33s were sold in the UK. They also had 100 of them. 34s weren't sold anywhere else other than Japan. And you could spec them with whatever colour you wanted, right? You had to pay for a big model to get the cool colours. So Midnight Purple 2, Midnight Purple 3, Millennium Jade was only on the Nurs, and Silica Brass was only on the Nurs or the M specs. So the rest were like black, silver, white. Bayside Blue is obviously very popular as the release colour. But the Japanese aren't big on bright colour cars at all. Like they prefer your very monotone cars. They don't like outlandish stuff. Some of them do. You'll see like the crazy guys like the crazy stuff. But 99% of them prefer like subtle stuff because they don't like. So the rarest colour GDRs are red and yellow.
Really?
Like way rarer than the big colours. And I'm talking like if you see a Midnight Purple 3, which is the one with the cool gold in it, or even a Millennium Jade or a Silica Brass, and it's parked next to a red 34 GDR, that is astronomically rarer. And the yellow is even rarer again. The yellow, there's only like
I've ever seen.
There's only like 60 of them.
Wow.
And there's 11,000 34s. So that's the crazy part. Andrew Hawkins who does GDR Festival. He had a red 34 GDR and he had like 2 red 33s. There's not many of them either. And you see that and you wonder, it looks really good in a red. Why is there not more of them? Because my dream is a yellow 34 GDR. Because they're the rare one, and I obviously want them because they're the rarest. But also, I really like yellow cars. It's a contentious topic. Some people don't. And a yellow 34 GDR, it looks
cool. Because I've never seen that. Bayside Blue was the car that I had access to, and that was obviously the colour that I
that's the hero colour.
Yeah. And it also had the Nismo wheels on it as well. So
LMs, yeah.
Gangster.
Yeah, were they 19s?
Yeah.
You know how expensive they are now?
Yeah. That's the problem. Again, I look at that car.
20 grand.
Because it was the same thing. Like, they were quite hard. The car was hard to sell when it was sold. Because, again, there wasn't a big market for them. It was, super niche interest.
Oh.
The same as, because interestingly, around that time with that company, I helped them sell. They had a GT3, so like with monkey bars in it. So it wasn't.
Don't say 997 because that's the best.
Yeah, I think it was a 997. And same exercise. Like, I remember the dollars that it was sold for, and I'll tell you, probably not on the air.
Yeah.
But like it just again wasn't a desirable car. Like a bloke from Melbourne was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I like that. I'll come and get it," and you know was still able to negotiate price, and you know you'd feel sick if you knew. But that was still, and I have a very vivid memory of that car because I'd taken to get it serviced, and it was a Friday afternoon. I'd picked it up and was driving it back, and it had there was a line that hadn't been done up properly, and the car stalled and stopped, and it was the M1 southbound on a Friday afternoon, and I'm sitting on the shoulder, and people are just driving past going, "You fucking wanker!" Like, what a fucking shit car! Like it was, like this was again late 00s, and Porsche was still a wanker car.
Yeah, which is crazy.
And I really struggled with that because I thought they were gangster. Like I thought they were the coolest car of all time, but it was just.
It's wild that that's like that transition has happened, but it's
totally
it's crazy that. Well, I think when you think back in the day, every new car that came out was better. So you look at like Porsche, right?
Yeah, they were big jumps.
There was a contentious period when the 993 went to the 996 because we lost air cooled.
Yeah, the 90s were weird for Porsche.
Yeah, but we lost so everyone was like, water cooled, that's gross. I don't want a 996. But everyone then drove them and realised how much better they were.
It's pretty good.
996 to 997, huge. 997 is, I don't care what anyone says, 997 is easily the greatest generation, and it will go down as the greatest generation of Porsche that existed in terms of like looks, shape, size.
I think that 997 are perfect.
Yep. And then they were phenomenal. Then 991 came. And 991, they were a lot bigger, but they were still great cars. You know, the turbo was really fast. The GT3s were hectic. The GT3 RS, when 991 came out, had massive wing. It was not. But now we're getting to the point where, same with Ferrari. You had 355, went to 360 F430. Remember when the 458 was announced? I don't think there was a single person on the planet who was unhappy about the look of the 458 Italia.
The 458 was like a renaissance of Ferrari because again Ferrari had a few not bad. I think I've always enjoyed the Ferraris, but the 458 was a real turning point for them.
Massive.
Where I just went, whoa, like that's everything Ferrari is supposed to be.
Yeah, screaming V8.
Oh man,
like a proper F1 gearbox as opposed to the ones they had before.
And the style, like the shape, the flow of it, and how it sort of comes down, and it's like it's hunting.
And then it's like so every single time the new one was a lot better.
Yeah.
And then Lamborghini, you know, you had the Gallardo, then you had like the Superleggera model. They had the Diablo went to the Aventador. The Aventador was
Aventador.
not Diablo, Murcielago. Murcielago went to Aventador. And when that came out, the Aventador looked like no one understood how that car could exist on the road.
That was Batman.
But now the Aventador's finishing up after, 10 years. And the Revuelto, I think I'm pronouncing that right, is coming. It's not blowing my mind.
No.
And then you got like Ferrari. Half of them are still the same design as the 458, but they've got turbo engines now, so they're really quiet.
Yeah.
And then you've got Porsche, the new 992 GT3 RS. It looks insane. Like it looks like a legitimate car.
It does look insane, yeah.
But I'm not really too sure I want to be whipping that around on the street. It literally looks like you're going to Le Mans.
It does, yeah. And they do. They look very extreme.
Like super extreme.
But you also know that they've got the buttons in them that take all the crazy out.
Yeah. And it's, but it's kind of like we've gotten to the point now where we almost hit the precipice of peak car.
Well, because there's too much now. And I think that's the problem is once you got
so now it's
to
like,
now,
it's a rubber band. And we're like, okay,
correct.
well, what's good back there?
Yeah, it's got to come back because you can't make them, well, you can, but like more horsepower, more, because again, you'd remember the days when 300 horsepower was a lot of horsepower.
Yeah.
Like that was big.
Yep.
That was big power. And like if you get 400 or 500, like that was a monster. You know, whereas everything now, like when, I think I saw a new M5 or something, it was like 700 horsepower.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where are we? Like that is, who needs 700 horsepower? Like that is more power. That means if you could actually access that and turn all the controls off, like you could bake 6th at 100, like just cook it, but you won't be able to because there'll be some idiot switch in there to stop you from doing it.
Yeah, it's like
whereas, the glory days of, what is it? GT, what was it? Now my brain's having a potato. The Widowmaker.
Oh, yeah, GT2.
Yeah, GT2. Like the Widowmaker. Like it's literally this car will kill you.
Yep.
Like that was part of I know that wasn't the sales pitch, but that's what it was. That was how it was known. Like
That's what they were doing.
This car is dangerous.
Yep. I remember, so like I'm big on reading material, like magazines. It hurts my soul, the magazines like aren't a thing anymore. So I grew up on Evo magazine and Speed magazine and stuff. But Evo magazine, I remember they did an article, would have been like late 2000s. And it was on like the top 10 most difficult cars to drive in anger. And they're like, basically the article was along the lines of you wake up, you got an unlimited garage of every car that existed. These are the top 10 cars that you maybe would want to, it was like have a meditate and have a soothed soul before you get in there and really drive them in anger. There was things like the F40 was in there. Number one was the Shelby 427 Cobra, which you can imagine why that's number one. But every generation of GT2 was in there. So 993, 996, 997, and then the 997 RS, all four. So of the top 10 cars, they had 4 GT2s.
Angry cars. And Porsche always astonished me because they shouldn't handle the way that they do. Like to me that, again, the weight distribution is wrong. It doesn't, because, if you love your BMW, it's 50-50, magic, all the good things. But with the weight in the back and the engine in the back and like that pendulum effect, because once you felt that, I've actually looped a 911 in Fortitude Valley. Unfortunately, I came out of the tunnel and did the turn there, and I'm like, because the road was a bit damp, and I probably gave it, just a fraction more than I should, and I ended up facing the wrong way in the middle of an intersection. You're like, and that's driving a Porsche, and but that was if you were silly with these cars, you're gonna have a real bad day, and I kind of miss that. Like,
well,
I want cars to be like that.
They say that if you can drive a Porsche hard, if you can drive a fast Porsche hard, that you're a good driver.
Yeah.
They were teaching people how to be a good driver because they were teaching you, not to let off the accelerator midway through the corner. They were teaching you not to, adjust angles difficultly, like very aggressively mid-corner because you've messed up. You need to brake first and accelerate through the corner. You know what I mean? You can trail, but they were saying it taught you how to drive well because, they're a bit obtuse in terms of their design.
And they'll punish you for getting it wrong.
It's similar to, like a lot of the OG mid-engine cars, MR2s. S2000s, they're not mid-engine, they're front engine, but they're a nightmare of a car.
My brother had an S2000, and I also remember having bad times in that, where, again, wet road enthusiastic throttle, and like there's no balance in that car. It's just, see you later, mate.
They're a violent car to drive hard.
Yeah, you want dry roads and good tyres.
Yep. But that's a lot of those cars that teach you how to drive well, whereas now, like you said...
Yeah, they just work. You just push the idiot buttons and you can look like a hero.
Like the new GT2 RS, the 991 GT2 RS. They were touting it. It's like, it's the Widowmaker and that. Not really seeing too many exploded ones over the internet, you know what I mean? Like when the 997 GT2 came out, people were questioning, especially the RS, I think it had 650 horsepower or something. People were questioning what Porsche were doing. Now, this is a rear engine.
Why does this exist?
Rear wheel drive. 650 horsepower car that's manual. What?
And they're like, because we can.
Yeah, like everyone's going to die driving this car. They were priced a bit out of the point where anyone would die. But now, like you said, you kind of miss that fear.
Oh, totally. Where you respect the car.
Yeah, you're not just jumping in and just flogging it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because like I'm genuinely scared of older cars.
Yeah.
And I think I treat everything I get into these days because that was beaten into me from all the things I've driven over the years.
But you've also been in a lot of modified fast cars.
Oh yeah, and race cars.
I think that's the big difference with a lot of guys these days. Not even kids, like even like early 20s and stuff. You see, it's crazy to me what kids are driving these days in their Ps, like Golf R's and
monster power cars,
Audi RS3s and stuff.
Yeah,
but they've never really been in a car that scared them. You know what I mean? Like people come up to you as a car enthusiast. When people come up to you and talk to you about cars, there's a few questions they always ask. What's your favourite car? What do you drive? And then when you tell them what you drive, is it fast? And that's a really difficult question to answer because I drive an E92 M3. Yeah, I guess you could say they're a fast car.
It's quick.
But to me, in my understanding of fast, is way more skewed than a normal person. So like, I'm like, it's pretty fast, but it's not really that fast. Whereas I think a lot of kids these days, they don't respect their cars because you get in a Golf or you get an RS3, you can be foot flat just cracking gears going through it. They're like, this is so awesome. Whereas I think we understand like what a really fast car is. And so you're not really just generally thrashing your car everywhere, because I know like my car's not that fast. I like to drive it and have a bit of fun, but I'm not driving it because it's quick, because I've been in
way faster
cars. And these kids, I think it's like they need that reality check. So then they tone down in their Golfs and their RS3s and their Hyundai i30Ns, and they're not as like obtuse with it because they realise their car's not fast. You know, they drive it like they think it's the fastest car in the world.
And that's the thing.
They need to go on a car that's going to like scare the fuck out of them.
And it was race cars that did that to me. Like once you've driven 800 horsepower race cars, that's when you go, oh, road cars are actually pretty slow.
Pretty slow, yeah.
Like they're pretty slow. They're not very impressive. Like the newest Ferrari versus any, big horsepower, 500 plus horsepower race car.
Yep.
Like race car every day of the week.
Yep.
Because like, man, that is, when you can hear a gearbox whining.
Oh, the big, yeah. See, mine was GDRs again. I'd grown up, in like my teens, just been obsessed. Not even in my teens, in my like mid-20s when I guess downshift was pretty prevalent, and I'd made some very good friends who had some big cars. I remember the first time I went in a 1,000 kilowatt GDR with a sequential. And that was always it's funny. That was always the dream. 1,000 horsepower GDR with a sequential gearbox and the whine. That was always the dream. Like that's like the dream car. Like that was my dream build. Like I want like the big cranky gearbox and the 2.8 litre stroker. And I went in one. I went 1,000 kilowatt one, and I don't really get scared in cars. I like love roller coasters and all that. I was packing it. I was absolutely. I've never been so far away from wanting something in my life. You just got into it, and you just sat back, and it just went all over the road. He a very good driver, lunatic, but really good driver, good friend, and he was just like banging gears, and I was like, "This is get me the fuck out of this car." It was just like I was like, "Okay, this is," and that's probably I've now been in one of those. Everyone's building the Lambos now with all the big TT kits and that sort of thing. Good friend of mine, Chris, he's got a 1,600 horsepower Huracan Performante. I went in that. That's front and center, like line ball, the fastest thing I've ever been in. So
I'll bet.
I now have like a gauge. I'm like, okay, well, if that's the fastest, then my car's like in the dumpster. But that's very usable. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like it has AC. He drives it from Toowoomba to the track.
Which is pretty
He drives from Toowoomba to my meets in it. It makes 1,550 to the wheels. Like what the fuck?
That doesn't make any sense to me.
But the big GDRs, the ones that are real scary, oh man.
The big GDRs, and here's a throwback for you when you talk about contentious issues. So back it was probably 2012-ish. It was when we started, like as a business, we started shooting video. And so my buddy Phil and I, we shot a piece with Nitto.
When you said back to GDRs and contentious issues, I was like, we're going one way.
Yeah, there's only one place.
There's a yellow one. There you go. You've seen. That's
so that colour was the genuine.
Okay. Yes, it's a genuine yellow.
Yeah. Actually, because I think it had a pearl put over the top.
They put a fleck in it. They put a pink fleck in it. But like we said, GDRs are worth fuck all. So when Tess and Trent did that.
Oh, yeah. When back then, like it just
was like $40,000 car. Who cares?
Nobody cared.
Now, fuck.
But that car, that was the first, because I got to go for a run in that, because I went to Sydney Motorsport Park with them and jumped in with Trent.
That would have been frightening.
Yeah, mate, sequential. And like it was sorted at that point.
It was 1,000. It was 1,000 kilowatt. I'm pretty sure 1,300 horsepower.
It was certainly 1,000 plus horsepower.
Yep.
And holy.
Yeah.
And again, it was only something that a super niche audience was interested in. But when I got to go in that car, that was like goals. That was like life goals. Was
and then you experience it, and you're like,
sequential, and like it was cool. And I ended up going around town and stuff in it, and like it was actually fairly well behaved. But I'm like, all this stuff is great, but you can't enjoy these cars. Like you can't, yes, you can take them to the track and do those sorts of things, but that's not enjoyable either. No. Whereas things like the M3 or cars that, mate, you can drive them and you can park them. And if you need to get some groceries, you can do that too. And it's why I go back to like E39 M5, was you could like go hauling with your friends. And the fact that that's been the ring taxi for like ever demonstrates that like why M5 is like one of the absolute kings of.
You could probably argue the E39 M5 is the greatest saloon car ever made.
For me, hands down.
Yeah. But like, what else would even be in contention? There'd be a few cars.
Manual XR6. No, but I sat in one actually this week. I'm looking for it. And I had that same feeling of when I sat in the E39 M5 because you're sitting in a 4-door saloon with a bloody wobbly stick in the middle. And you're like...
And all the boys in the back.
So crazy. Yeah, you got all your friends in the car. And that was the best part about those cars was you got it loaded up with your mates and you're in this just monster.
Yeah.
Like, that's the greatest. Whereas 2-seat cars, like, again, rolling in an Aventador, the coolest. But, it's you and that. And, again, it's weird and people look at you and the whole bit. Whereas, like, you can load the boys in.
Yeah. And if you're driving and someone's rubbernecking at the car, they're a man of culture.
Yeah.
Or
they're
a culture,
they're a genuine enthusiast.
Yeah. If you're going past and they're like...
You're like, yeah, boy.
Because E39s are special cars, man.
Yeah.
Special cars. They're going to go down history pretty well. Like, I think we're at that point now where we can start talking about how cars are going to develop into going down in history.
Oh,
because cars are collectible, like we said. So E39 M5,
mate, the greatest.
Yeah,
like that. And again, drive one. And I think this is one of the things. It's that whole "don't meet your heroes" that we've been talking about. When I met my hero, still one of the best days of my life.
Yeah.
Was driving that car, and that's an astonishing feeling. So a car that you've admired and loved and respected, and then you finally get a chance to have a go, and you're like, "Holy shit, this is even better than I thought it would be."
Oh man, yeah, they're a mega car.
Yeah,
like they're definitely like a bucket list car for me to own. Not in my top 10, but they're definitely like a bucket list.
They're on the
yeah. Especially, there's a lot of cars. I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but there's a lot of cars from the 2000s, right? When we had the introduction of paddle shift, right? Everyone wanted to be Michael Schumacher.
Yes.
I mean, that's when
DSG.
That's when he was peaking. Like everyone knows Schumacher in the early 2000s. Everyone wanted to be Schumacher. All the Ferraris were coming with F1 gearboxes. They started them in the 90s, but they started to get prevalent into the 2000s. And then everyone was speccing the paddle shift because that was a thing. They were faster. And we were used to the manuals. And the manuals were we'd had manuals for years.
Absolutely. Whereas nobody had seen a
it was just like a Tiptronic or a slush box or a manual. So you always get the manual. Well, now we got paddles and they're fast.
Yeah.
Well, they were fast. They're not fast anymore. The 2000s cars with paddle shift gearboxes are proper bad. Like really, really bad. E60 M5. That gearbox detrimentally ruined that car.
Yes.
But if you were to manually convert one.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because
and it's not expensive.
No, it's not, because they're a gangster car, but those gearboxes sucked so hard.
Like really bad. E46 CSL. Also, same gearbox, SMG.
Because those early SMGs actually ruined paddle shift for me for a long time because I knew that they were a turd.
Yep. Same with 360 Medina.
Yeah.
Same with 355. Same with F430.
Yeah. They were just trash.
Yeah. Same with early gen Gelatos with the E-gear. They were just like, people were like, yeah, this is F1, but it's that's not really. Once we got into, I think it was probably like 2009, 2010, when they really started DCT.
Yeah,
came
they got the proper dual clutch system.
Like
where
DSG with
where
VW.
It would be holding and, like that.
Contained units.
Yeah.
That's when they got fast.
Yeah.
And they're still...
And reasonably reliable was the other thing. They held up.
Minimal servicing periods because those SMGs.
Oh, man. You wouldn't buy one just because it had that gearbox in it because you like...
Clutch packs and shit.
The old M3 stands for money cubed. Like that really...
Yep.
On those...
Well, the M5 E60, so... For people who aren't
2007 or whatever it is.
That's the V10 M5. Yeah. I think the oil pump for the gearbox service on them is like close to 10 grand.
Ugh.
Simply tuning at Brendale, plug for my man Buckner.
There you go.
They can probably convert one for the same money, if not less. You can have a manual V10 saloon.
Yeah. And that was where I thought that car fell over because I actually really liked the shape of that.
Same.
Because I really enjoy the Chris Bangle period of BMW. Yeah. I think they did wonderful things.
I don't think he did anything wrong, Chris Bangle.
But he helped. I think he helped to define the new BMW philosophy, which is now, if it's not polarizing, you're not pushing design.
Yeah.
But I really like that.
Oh, I think if the E60 M5 came in a manual option, like it did in the States, there was heaps of them. Yeah,
really?
So the US got manuals. I don't think the UK did.
I stopped paying attention.
We didn't. We didn't get the manual. We got none of them. But the gearboxes exist, right? You can convert them. if they had have sold the manual and we had Aussie delivered E60 M5s, that car would probably have held better.
Yeah.
In terms of
Because
like
that
popularity.
motor, like when you first time I drove one of those was at Queensland Raceway.
Yep.
And I still remember down the main straight, tipping it into turn one for the first time, and the seat bolsters moved.
Yeah.
And so, like on the left hand side of my body, the bolster moved
yeah.
and wrapped in around me, and I'm like, "What is this wizardry?"
Yeah. And then you get on it, and it just howls.
Howled, and like you could empty a fuel tank in 40 minutes. Like stupid, impractical car. And that's the best. Like that's
they're proper cool.
Cool
And the fact
car.
that like an E46s too, because they had the SMGs, same thing. Everyone was optioning the paddles. It's the same sort of thing. So do you know about the gearboxes? How they're actually a manual?
no.
So that SMG, this is the funniest part. It's a manual gearbox
Yeah, right.
with a pump on it.
What?
Yeah, so the conversion, the gearbox is already there.
Really?
You just pull the pump. The expensive part is putting in the stick
Seriously?
and the clutch. Yeah, that's it. It's like less than $10,000 to convert one. It's the same gearbox.
How did I not
But the
know this?
pump is what, the oil pump is what is moving the gears for you, which is why they're slushy, because you click it.
And then it pushes that, and then there's a slow mechanical
There's
process.
a slow mechanical process. So that's why E46 M3s, the E46 CSL, it's probably getting to the point where it is a very risky move to manualize one because they're a rare car.
They are a rare car. And they're very special.
They are, but can you imagine one of them in a manual?
That'll be so cool.
Like, there was a friend of mine has one. He's always considered like selling it. It's an Aussie one too. There's only 23 of them.
Yeah.
It's got a fair few Ks. It's a driver's car, which is good. You know what I mean? You buy one with 30,000 Ks, you're never going to drive it.
No, you'd be too scared.
So it's got a fair few Ks on it. He's always considered selling it. I was like, man, just don't sell it.
No.
Just put a manual gearbox in it.
And just love it.
And
love
just
it
love
forever.
it. And honestly, in 10, 15, 20 years, no one's going to give a shit
No.
if it's a manual or not, because the manual's going to be better. It's like, you use the example of like 250 GTOs, most expensive car in the world. No one cares if one's been written off 5 times. If you're buying one, you're buying one.
Build it because it's still the chassis and they look at the VIN numbers.
Yeah.
Or the,
It's going to get to
build
that point
numbers.
with GDRs, with E39 M5s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If one comes through and it's got 310,000 Ks in 15 years' time,
Yeah. Whatever.
who cares? Where's the other ones for sale? Oh, there's none. Okay,
Yeah,
well, I've got
they
to buy
don't
that
exist.
one.
Yep.
Yeah. That's pretty much, everyone's concerned about, was it Aussie delivered?
Oh.
Was it... Yeah.
Mate, the Aussie delivered thing. Can we just pump the brakes on that for a second?
Oh shit!
'Cause
There's a fair few people talking about this right now.
I'm okay. So I've watched this obviously for a long time because people were always funny about stuff that came in from other places, and
Yeah.
I've still watched that. So do people care anymore that a 911 was Aussie delivered or not? Is what I've noticed, and the answer for me has been no. They just want a 911.
Nah, it's fucked. It's worse.
Yeah,
And now Aussie is like, it's crazy. I do
the premium.
I do like moonlight, I guess you could say. Like I have the day job, and then I run my events on the side, which is like, if people don't know, I do Northshore Cars and Coffee. We've kind of just like snowballed into talking.
Yeah, we've
talking
totally
shit.
missed that. We'll get back there at some
Yeah.
point. But yes, we're probably a good time to talk about it.
I moonlight in like car acquisition and car like off-market car sales, just because I know a lot of people, and some people don't want their cars listed online,
No.
so they contact me and be like, "Hey,
Yeah.
dude, can you put this in front of some people?"
Yeah,
Which is cool. I really like that. That's like the dream job.
oh yeah,
But it's crazy how someone will be like, "Hey, man, I'm chasing a like 993 turbo, right? Which is getting a very iconic car. They're getting very expensive, and I am now at the point where someone comes to me and they're like, "Hey, this is what I'm chasing. I'm chasing this car," and I have to ask the question, "Do you care if it's Aussie delivered or not?"
Yeah.
And they're always like, "Has to be an Aussie car," and I go back. So an Aussie 993 turbo is gonna run you 550, probably 500 to 600 grand for a 993 turbo. They're not that special. They're a great car. I'm a 993 obsessive. I think the 997 is the best generation. 993 is my favorite generation. You can get a UK one, probably landed for 300 grand. Landed. What? It's the same car, but people are like, "Oh, it's sold on the roads." I was like, okay, they're not going to be all fucked. Yeah, some of them back in the 90s were cooked, but we're now at the point where everyone looks after their cars.
Because they know that they're an investment.
And most people don't drive these cars in winter, and that's when the salt is on the road. That's the difference. So obviously, for people who don't know, in the UK and any snow country, Canada, America, Japan, to stop the snow from building on the road and so it melts faster, they lace the roads with salt. So that degrades the snow quicker. That's when you get that really dirty, grimy looking snow. And when you drive over that, the salt obviously goes onto your under tray. Salt is corrosive on metal and then it rusts the bottom of the car. And people are just like, yeah, no, can't be a UK car, can't be a Hong Kong car, can't be a...
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay.
And there can't be a Hong Kong car. It's like...
That's even worse.
That's really worse.
Yeah.
People are really...
Because they don't have snow.
No.
So they're the same
Cars are
weather.
great. Whereas you import a Japanese car and that's all okay.
Yeah. But the reason the Japanese cars are okay is because we're importing cars that weren't sold here. So the problem is people's affinity for an Aussie delivered car that's here. So E46 CSLs, perfect example. There's 1,300 of them, 1,350 of them globally. Still a rare car, right? There's only 23 Aussies. So 23 Aussie cars. The premium and Aussie CSL drives over a UK car is phenomenal. And they're the same fucking car.
Yeah.
Like, just buy a UK one.
Yeah.
And be
then
done
you
with
can
it.
enjoy the car.
Yeah.
But the problem is now they've become an investment category and people are grading them based on...
Yeah, but people just
all
want
these
the
things.
Aussie car, and I don't know what it is. I have a fair few friends. Is actually a fair few friends who have been talking about it at the moment, and we just don't get it. And these are guys who are bringing cars in.
Yeah, I don't get it
Personally for themselves, and people are like, "Oh man, that's crazy! You've got a Aussie delivered. Oh, what would it be an example? Aussie delivered 550 Maranello. Also, that is a slept-on car. And they're like, oh, no, it's not an Aussie one, it's a UK. And everyone's like, oh.
Yeah, and you're disappointed.
It's
you're
a
like,
fucking 550 Maranello.
you shouldn't be disappointed in this car.
Have you seen Bad Boys 2? You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, man, the greatest. Chips in there. But because a buddy of mine's got an SL500. So, so black on black, Brabus blades on it. So it's a 92. And, like, it is gangster.
Yep.
It's one of the best I've ever seen. And, the person who bought it off probably wasn't as transparent as they should have been about,
where it came from. Yeah.
And it turns out it was a Hong Kong car. And he put it up for sale recently and people just ravaged him going, oh, it's not
Aussie.
It's not an Aussie car. And he's like,
who cares?
huh? Like it's only just clicked 100,000 Ks. It's got like 102,000 Ks.
Yeah.
The paint's perfect. It's got it is gangster. It is one of the best I've ever seen. But people get really hung up on that. And I'm like,
it does my head in. It legitimately does my head in.
This doesn't make any sense. You're talking crazy.
It legitimately does my head in. Like in Japan, if you have an imported car, so if it's a non-Japanese delivered variant, whether it's like imported from America or whatever, that's cooler.
Yeah, more special.
That's more special. So people are like, oh shit, you got a left-hand drive car. Yeah. Fuck, that's so cool.
Whereas here we look down on that. You're like, what is wrong with us?
930 turbos. The difference in price between a right-hand drive 930 turbo Aussie car and a left-hand drive is almost close to $400,000 difference. That's not. That's a $400,000 difference,
which is madness. That makes no rational sense.
You'll pay $170, $180 for a 930 turbo from the UK with a decent amount of Ks, with decent Ks on it, in very good condition. You'll pay $450, $500 for an Aussie one. Like, what are you talking about? I have these people forget the fact that it's from the UK. Maybe drive a 930
But they're from
turbo.
the same factory. Like they were built like
Yep.
one by one next to each other in the same factory.
Yep.
I'm like, what are you confused about here? And this is back when they were built, particularly those cars, back when they were built in the real factory, not the one in Brazil or South America.
The real, Stuttgart, man, it's an absolute, like, and there's one thing that I do like following, I'm probably my own worst enemy in that. I do like hyping up when an Aussie variant comes to me, like, that's actually an Aussie delivered car.
Well, because it plays well. Plays to the audience.
And then, but it's just when you're trying to hustle cars and if someone's in the market for a car and they're sternly against anything but Aussie, it's like, man.
You're slicing out a big chunk of the market because
Like,
we're a joke in the global market.
Yeah.
Like in terms of our scale, we are
It's like,
comedy.
not only are you going to be paying overs, and I mean overs, for a car that's probably not going to be like you're going to get an experience that's not worth the money that you've just paid.
Correct.
You're never going to find one. You know what I mean? These people looking for 993 turbos, 993 turbo S's. There's probably there would be like less than 10 of them in Australia, and there's a few people looking. There's one for sale. It's 1.3 mil. And people looking, they're like, oh yeah, really like a 993 turbo S. I was like, man, you're the pool that you were trying to pick from to find this car because you don't want an overseas one. There was like 360 or something overseas total. There's like 10 in Australia. I hope you're willing to be looking for 15 years for this car
Because you're not in the game.
you could probably buy one tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it'll be here in 3 months.
And then you can enjoy it.
Probably be mint. You can drive it, and then you'll sell it, and you'll probably get.
And you'll still make money.
You'll probably still make money. I think in years to come, people will probably kick themselves over the Aussie thing because
I think so too. I think people are
once
out of
EV
their minds.
comes,
Yeah,
like-
absolutely, and no one cares.
and then all of a sudden it's like, who gives a
all
shit?
of those all your EVs are made in China.
Yep.
You know, I don't see anybody getting upset about that.
Yeah, but it'll get to the point where it'll get
It doesn't matter where they
the
came
demand
from
will be like
because they don't exist anymore.
I just want one.
Yeah, absolutely. Like because people will miss the analog experience
Yep.
because, as we said, like like you and I are very similar on this. Like I feel nothing driving those cars.
Yep.
And the generation that grows up on them, when they finally get in something that's a proper belter, they'll be like, "Oh my god!" Like there's a huge tipping point coming for the entire car community.
Yeah, like what are kids going to learn to drive manually
You're not like you
in 10 years?
What could you like?
Yeah,
It will actually be interesting to see if it's even still a license.
it's going to be crazy. Well, the cars will still exist.
Yeah, there'll be a handful of them, but nobody will have.
Yeah, that's crazy. So these kids coming up, if they're car enthusiasts, you would imagine that the cars that maybe they won't even aspire to own them. But I was born in the 90s. I don't aspire to own a 250 GTO because I probably won't ever own one. But you know what I mean? I'd love to drive one. Surely these kids will be the same. It's like, oh shit, it's got this thing in the middle which has got like some slots on it.
Yeah, it'll be like vinyl, where that fell out of vogue for ages and nobody wanted it, and now all of a sudden you're paying $80 for a record because like, it's such a pure, rich experience.
Yeah.
You know, it's good. It'll do the exact same thing that every other thing does, but
At least manuals won't be stolen anymore.
No. But it's just it's such a weird time. But anyway, we really should circle back and talk about, it was about the year 2009. Tell me about downshift.
Yeah, there we go. So car guy, was going to uni, studying business, was trying to procrastinate that. And I was into photography. So I just bought my first DSLR. It was a 450D Canon. So it's old school.
Pimping.
And I was taking pictures, and I've always loved writing. I was in school. I was always really good at English and shit. Math, can't do my times tables, but you know what I mean. And I just wanted somewhere to write articles about events that I went to, and it was just for me. I didn't give a shit if anyone read it, or just for mates. So I'd go to meets, I'd go to track days when I could, and then I'd write articles and post pictures that I'd taken and edited. And did it on a blog spot, which is a massive throwback for anyone who knows what that is. And then, it kind of took off. And I was attending, regular meets. The most prominent at the time was JDM Style Tuning, end of month meets. And it was just like a bunch of mates and I going to that. Whereas Downshift was just me, early days. But there was a lot of help from Andrew Foy, who we've mentioned, I think, before. And then another mate of mine, Ben, who is one half of Likewise, if you've heard of them with the Keynote stuff. Yeah,
so, their stuff's so cool.
Yeah, the Likewise boys are awesome. They're like two of my best mates.
Yeah,
I introduce them together. So
really.
It's pretty cool.
Oh man, what they do is awesome.
Man, they're legends. And so Ben and Foy were like two that helped me with Downshift, but like they helped me with, Ben would help me with editing and with like logo design, and Foy would help me with photos and shit like that. And then it was sort of getting like a lot of traction. And I was like, may as well do a website. So we made a website sort of thing, and with the help of Foy and Ben, and it was just covering events and that sort of stuff, and doing WTAC and all that sort of jazz. And the JDMS teammates, I pitched it to Matthias, who now owns Downshift, about doing like a collaborative JDMST and Downshift. And he was like, that sounds sick. Because he was contributing photos to Downshift and that sort of thing. And he was like, hey, man, he's a gun photographer. He was like, took some photos and stuff like that. And I would post them up and I'd write the article. And the JDMS teammates were getting proper unruly. I don't know if you remember them back in the day, but they got out of hand. Like they were getting like proper out of hand. We were just maxing out like any car park we went to. The shit was just going everywhere.
Because that was like underground meets. It brought back like underground meets.
Yeah,
which was...
they were sick. And it got to the point where it was like, we probably can't do this anymore. Or JDMST, which was Justin Fox, and the people they would do, it was organised on a forum, and you had like the Sydney and the Melbourne ones were organised by different people, and Matthias would do the Queensland ones, and it kind of got to the point where like no one really wanted to do end of month meets anymore because it was getting too much of a nightmare or too like difficult. And then the idea of the first Downshift meet at a private property that we had paid for came about, mainly due to me. I said, I was like, what happens if we went somewhere where we could just like lock the cars in, save them, because we were starting to get police attention to the JDMS teammates. I say we, but like the events were starting to get police attention. I wasn't really involved in organising them. I would just invite people to them. And then the first meet came up, and Downshift by that time was, that was probably 2011 was like the first meet sort of thing, and they just hit the ground running like really quick, really really fast, and it was then Downshift sort of went into like a severe prominence, like heavy prominence from like 2011, 2012, 2013. It was just like mental stuff. And then it was like obviously Paul Walker died. We did like a charity cruise, which was like, I'd say the Downshift Paul Walker charity cruise in 2013, I think it was when 2013 or 2014 maybe, was probably the biggest like single car event that Queensland ever had. It was mental because everyone wanted to be there to celebrate Paul Walker. And then it's sort of without getting into semantics about the ins and outs of what unfolded within Downshift internally, it basically was going in a direction that was more monetary focused than culture focused. And it started to slide quite a ways from like where I stand with cars in terms of like my passion. And it would like, I guess, kind of agitate me that there was less and less high-end quality cars. I'm not talking just supercars. I'm talking like quality builds and stuff attending.
Just well built.
Because there was so many cars attending.
It was a victim of its own success.
100%. 100%. And the fact is you could probably, if anyone who doesn't like the current climate of the car scene, in terms of there's lots of Downshift events now. They're all the same. It's basically you got Downshift and then you've got all these other groups that have just copied Downshift.
Correct.
Those people can come at me however they want. I was there before them. Downshift was there before them. They've just copied the metric. It's fine. They're all the same. And so the scene is very similar because no one was trying to reinvent the wheel. No one was trying to do things differently because no one wanted to upset the apple cart. And then Downshift just existed for ages. And I'd stepped pretty much fully back from Downshift. I was like kind of agitated and didn't really like the direction it was going on, and things happened and things unfolded within it or whatever. And I left in 2018. I'm not ashamed to say that it is like it's bad blood. Like it's not like a happy leave. Like do not gel well with Downshift and anyone involved in it anymore. But it is what it is. You know what I mean? I have no qualms in saying that there is 1,000% a place in the car scene for Downshift. Like people need that because that's people coming into the car scene.
And it gets a lot of people in. And that part of it I think is really nice.
100%. Like it's a place for like P-platers and like young kids to
Before
come to
you can
car
afford
stuff.
the stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
And come and meet other car people, the way that you met your friends.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Who are now,
it's basically like what JDMST was.
Correct.
In the modern era. Like there is a place in the car scene for that. For sure. Those meets need to exist because it needs to give people who were just fresh into the car scene, or maybe don't even take the car scene that seriously. Like, there is casual car enthusiasts and then like serious car enthusiasts. And the casual guys are just like, yeah, I just want to go to a meet and hang out. Nothing crazy. And then those people have to go somewhere. And Downshift is definitely the best of that group. There's a lot of other guys trying to do it too.
Absolutely.
But Downshift is definitely the best of that. But to me, I was like, it got to the point where then there was no meets inspiring. No one was doing something to us. We'd lost Auto Salon. We'd lost all that. And I was like, there's no meets where there's an emphasis on quality so people can come and be inspired to do something more. And this harks back to what we were talking about even before the cameras turned on with Mark Arsenal. Very much, he was pretty much first cab off the rank doing stuff in the US.
He is the OG.
Yeah.
Because for people that don't know Mark Arsenal, do you want to throw a...
So Mark Arsenal is like basically a car scene icon in the US. He founded Illust and Fat Lace, which turned into Hella Flush, Slam Society. He's now like marketing manager for Hoonigan. He was marketing manager for Rotiform. He is basically the reason RWB even exists in the prominence it does. He brought that to America and then to SEMA and all that. Rocket Bunny also pretty much owe him everything as well. He's just like a man with a finger on a pulse. And he wasn't the first to do it in America, but he was one of the first to really push it. And because of that, the American scene has followed the Fat Lace trend or the Illust or the Hella Flush trend, even though those brands, Illust and Fat Lace, still exist. Hella Flush doesn't. But that trend of quality over quantity, they have like meets like Downshift and stuff still as well. But the mainstay of America is based on there's high-end meets and people go. And the crazy part is that people know they go there. They don't even try to enter. They'll park on the street and they'll walk in because they understand the dynamic of it, which is what I wanted to replicate. So things fell into place and I was like, I'm going to do meets again. I was doing nighttime meets under a different brand called Garage Stars, but they were very low-key, private Facebook group. I was screening everyone coming in. Once again, it's almost a replica of Downshift. Those meets started to get...
victim of their own success again. Because I saw those blow up.
Yeah.
Because, I saw them getting really popular.
The problem we found wasn't attendance with Garage Stars. The problem we found was like the posting of... Because it got prolific and people would post after the event. And then because we would find... Because I did Garage Stars with another good friend of mine, Daniel No. And we would find like really good car parks, well lit. We would park the cars separated, so it was a good time for photos. And then people would be like, oh, that's a sick place for a meet.
Yeah.
And then they would have their meets there.
And then they'd ruin it.
And they would apocalyptically destroy it. And there was all these different groups. I can't even remember them all.
No. Well, I remember that. They'd come in after you. You'd find the spot, set it up, do all the groundwork, and then they'd bring a pile of shit boxes there and do burnouts and get thrown out.
Yeah, or just invite like 4,000 cars.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, cops can't differentiate. They just see car meet. Yeah. It's like, oh, well. So then that caused us chaos to the point where we ran out of venues. So we weren't doing Garage Stars, and then the opportunity arose, funnily enough, to hire a venue, which was a venue that we used to hire with Downshift, which is at Hamilton. That was where the Paul Walker Charity Cruise was. It's fucking crazy that 10 years later I'm hiring the same venue. This time, though, we're not hiring it off some random landowner. We're hiring it off, like, state government. So there was a lot of loopholes and stuff to jump through, and I was at one point just signing. Like, it got to the point where I was just signing agreements and documents. I don't even know what I was signing because the government's just like, you need to dot your I's, cross your T's. Like, massive public liability. I'm talking more than 20 million.
All the things.
Yeah. And then it was like, this was paid venues and stuff. I was like, all right, I'm going to give this a crack. Like, let's see if the scene will take this. Like, a proof of concept, call it.
Yeah.
So I did my first one. I only promoted it, like me inviting people, and then promoted it on my Instagram. Our Instagram's it's got 50,000 something followers, but it's not Facebook shareable, that sort of thing. So I was like, I'm just going to keep it curated just to Instagram so I can try and limit. I didn't know what to expect in terms of attendance. What I knew is I would prefer a lower attendance number than a fucking massive one. So I was like, all right, just keep it to that. And then ran my first one that was July last year, and it was really, really good. And everyone was like, this is an awesome concept. So the way it works is I've been to the prominent cars and coffees like around the world, like Crystal Cove, which is probably the most famous. That's Laguna Beach. That's the one that used to be all over YouTube and stuff like that. And the Malibu one, where there is curated parking. And you basically drive in, there's an attendant at the front, and he points for you where to park. There's no arguing. There's no VIP. There's no paying more to get in. That's it. And it doesn't matter. Like, even cool cars sometimes can head out the back to spectator. It's fine. But there is a display area that has a finite amount of parks. And that display area sometimes can be themed, which is what I've been like working on, as well as it's like limited by number and it's a quality emphasis. So the attendant on the front gate is me. So judge, jury, and executioner, I'm happy to like sleep in the bed that I make, right? But we've got to the point where with downshift and all these other meets that 100%, like I have no issue with them existing. My issue is that they have existed for so long and have been doing the same thing so regularly that now people expect to get in. They expect you to pay a fee and they can park wherever they want. And they expect, and then that comes with a level of they think their car's sick. Everyone thinks their car's cool, right? I love my car. I'm obsessed with my car. But majority of the time, if I go to a meet and someone parks me at the back, I don't really care. Like, the car's for me. I don't really care. If I go to a JDM meet and they're like, yeah, BMW's a shit, park out the back. It's fine. I don't give a shit. That doesn't faze me in the slightest. Even when the car's finished and it's slammed on T37s with Venturi interior, Venturi engine bay and all that sort of stuff, I'll still park at the back. I don't care. You know what I mean? If I go to a Euro meet and they're like park front and center, sick. If I go to a JDM meet or a muscle car meet, don't come in. That's cool. All right, or whatever. I'm coming to see the other cars. Hit almost straight away, probably within the second meet that I ran, I started to get people to come up to me. Be like, hey, why wasn't I parked in display? And I was like, I'm a reasonably confrontational person in terms of I'm not afraid to say it how it is. But I also like am not about like hurting people's feelings and shit. You know what I mean? I don't want to be a dick. And I was just like, oh man, like that's a heavy question to put on me. Like, do you want me to tell you that it's not up to standard? Because I don't want to say that. You're asking me to tell you that. So I'll come up with some harebrained reason, right? But it's not always the case. So some people will come in and they'll roll in with their mates and there'll be 8 Mark 7 Golf Rs, right? And in that 8, there'll be 1 on T37s and there'll be, say, a final edition one in a rare colour. And I'll be like, okay, those 2 can come in, split the group. The other 6 are going out the back and then they're pissed. And they're coming up to me, my car's stage 4, makes 600 horsepower. I'm like,
cool.
Man.
This is what yeah.
It's called Cars and Coffee, not Cars and Golfs. We need to limit it. Same with Audi RS3s because there's so many of them. Same thing. One will come through. It'll be a cool stock one with spaces, nice and low, look really good, cool colour. Come on in. One with T37s, come on in. The rest are on like Koyas or whatever, at the back. Then they get angry. Even ones that aren't on Koyas, that are on good wheels out the back. Why? Because there's already 2 in there. You know what I mean? People, and it's gotten to the point where I'd say 98% of people are awesome about it. And they understand the metric.
They get it. They get what you're trying to do.
And the funny part is if they arrive and they get in spectator and I know they have a cool car, I am acutely aware that I like their car. I have a very, very good memory. So I will then let them in. Like I have one guy who comes all the time. I can't remember his name, which really bugbears me. But he used to have a CLA 45. And he came to the first one and he parked in display because it was just a tidy stock CLA 45. I think it was like lowered, maybe spaces, just a clean CLA 45 AMG parking there. Cool. And then the next like 3 events, I was like out the back. And then he sold it and he bought a EJ8 Civic, which is a coupe, like an EK style coupe Civic. It was on Graham lights, cool car. Came to a meet and I was parked out the back and he's like, oh man. But it's actually cool. It's on Graham lights. He's doing cool work to it and stuff like that. He came to the next one and he came to a Honda themed one. And I was like, yeah, man, you can park.
Yeah, you're in.
And he was just like, oh, thanks, man. I was like, yeah, dude. Like,
yeah, it's your day.
Yeah.
This is you.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I will happily like try and like swap cars out. Obviously, there's some cars that are always going to get in.
Absolutely.
right?
If they're a Titan, then
They're always going to get in. But the idea of it is to put a lot of high quality cars and an emphasis on not necessarily like high quality builds and supercars and all that. It's an emphasis to show that if you want to modify your car, save for the wheels that you want. Just put spacers and lower it on the factory wheels. It looks great. Like, it looks fantastic. Mark 7.5 Golf R's factory wheels look great. Just do that and then save for however long it takes you to get the wheels that you really want. Just because you like don't feel that you need to modify your car to be someone. Like, just modify your car for you, man. Like, even if you want to buy replica parts and modify for you, that's great. But I don't support replica companies because I support the OGs who did it. I understand money can be tight, yada, yada, yada. But wheel companies and tuner companies and stuff like that, I'm big on supporting them because they're the guys who are like pushing the industry, especially like Volk Racing and all that. Like,
they invest.
I have a massive affinity for them. Like, I love them as a brand and I don't like supporting the copycat of that. It's nothing. I don't hate someone if they run. A lot of people think I just hate people who don't have genuine parts. It's not the case. Like, I know heaps of people. I'm friends with tons of people who run replica parts. It's fine. I don't hate a person because of it. But I'm going to tell you that you need to change the wheels or you need to change the body kit or the wing because it's like, just strive. Like, when growing up, we would just read magazines, you build threads, and you go through and you'd be like, that's what I want to do. Nowhere in my mind was I like, okay, that's what that dude's car looks like. But I can get 60% of that look, kind of, for way cheaper. Yeah, I'm done with that. I'd be like, no, all right. I can only afford like one part every 6 months or one part a year.
I'll wait.
Because then when it gets done, I'm like, oh shit, okay.
It's perfect.
This is exactly what I wanted. And it's the same with my car. When I bought the TE37s, 14 months I waited for them. And people were like, how can you wait that long for wheels? I was like, well, I got a vision in my head. Why am I going to be like, oh, you know what? I'm going to get something else. I'm going to get something cheaper, something to tide me over.
Something to tide me over. Like, but why? That's not what I want.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the prominence of the Cars and Coffees. They've blown up very fast. Very, very fast, which was cool to see. It was like, I was kind of worried that, did I live in a bubble where I believed that people wanted these meats because I wanted them? And they didn't actually want them. In which case, it is what it is. Like,
fair enough.
You got to burn money, or whatever, to see if something works. So I ran the first 3 like off my own back, and venue's not cheap to hire.
Can't imagine.
Public liability, 30 million is, while it's not as expensive as people would imagine 30 million to be, it's fucking expensive compared to the lower amounts.
For something you're doing just for fun to see if it works.
Yes. So it started cutting through, and then it came to the point of like having to get other bits and pieces. I had to buy like a ton of like, it's also all the small things, man. Like, I had to buy a generator in case like coffee vans and stuff needed a generator. I had to buy like a shitload of witches' hats and bunting to sections areas off. I had to buy signage so people knew where to drive on the street and stuff like that. I got a shitload of volunteers. Which are mates who, like, I buy them I'll buy them breakfast afterwards. But now I've also got girls on the door who I'm paying too, because if you pay someone to do a job, they do it better than someone who's just flippantly giving up.
Yeah.
Even though they're my mates, they do a bang up job. If I'm paying some girls to do it,
absolutely, it's a professional.
They're
job,
a professional
you take
job.
it seriously.
And then it's like getting vendors in, and it's the time is the massive one that people don't see. So I was showing some mates this on the lead up to my last one. So I do them every other month is how I like to describe it. So like this year I did February, which was I did February 22nd. I then did April 15th. I then did May 20th. And then the next one won't be until July 29th. So it's like, it's just staggered. And so it gives a bit of...
Gives it some breathing room.
Yeah, breathing room so people can do stuff to cars and build cars.
Look forward to it.
And
patience.
It's gotten to the point where, like, it's at its limit. Like the car park.
Shockers. Because how many cars can you fit in your sectioned off area?
In display?
Yeah, display. The good ones.
Be put 160, but we could maybe get 170 if we do some Jimmy parking, like some dodgy parking.
That's still pretty good.
Yeah.
That's a lot of cars.
It is. Probably getting like 400 to 450 cars total to an event, which is manageable. But if I started really pushing it hard now, so basically I've gone into, I needed to start making money from it because I was.
Oh, of course, you can't just go backwards forever.
I was deep in the hole.
Yeah,
pretty much. I was burning cash into it. And I was like, okay, I need to start making money. But I didn't want to do the typical like metric that all these meets seem to be using, all these mirrored meets, all these downshift mirror meets, which is just a flat rate paid entry. Because I was like, oh man, it just kind of gives off a bad vibe. Mainly, maybe because I know behind the scenes of that's the intention. But I'm saying I don't want people to think that I'm just about this for the money.
Yeah.
Because I'm about it for the culture, right? So I had to think about it, and I tossed some ideas around and with some mates, and I came up with a donation scheme, right? And originally I did it, and it was just like you could just donate to the meets, but then that was just reliant on someone going up to everyone, which was
difficult to manage.
Yeah, it was way too difficult to make sure everyone got approached because people wanted to donate, but they were
absolutely.
Like, I didn't see
anyone. Where am I supposed to do this?
So I was like, oh, that's not going to work. So I tried that on my fourth one. So yeah, didn't make any money on the fourth. So I was about 4 meets in, and I was like, okay, I've spent like a fucking lot of money.
Yeah.
I need to start making money.
Got to turn this around.
I need to start making money like fast. Otherwise, I can't just keep doing these, and people are going to get pissed at me for burning the meets when they clearly were, on their face value, they were working because they're big and there's big attendance. And I was like, oh my God. So I do mandatory donations on entry. You can nominate the amount.
That's cool.
So it's like people can, if all they got is like $1, $2, $3 in the car in change, just chuck it in.
That's cool.
I hate you for paying in coins because, oh my God, the ergonomics behind managing coins is cooked. But look at it. I don't.
Mate, the coin collectors will actually come and talk to you.
Yeah, and my dad's a coin collector, so he loves it. But yeah, so it was like people paying coins, which is like I'm happy that
but that's cool.
Yeah,
like that's very.
And then it's like a gradual sliding scale, right?
Correct. So if you're cool to throw in a bit more.
Yep, and then it's mandatory donation per car.
Yeah,
it's not per person.
And see, that's cool too.
So it's per car because it's one car coming into consumer space.
Yeah,
walk-ins, no pay. Bikes, no pay. Those two are no pay because of traffic logistics.
Yeah.
If you're pinging every person who's walking in and every bikes are a lot more difficult to pay on.
They are very hard to pay.
So just come in, man. Like it's fine. Whatever. I'm not stressed. Like this isn't about making money. And well, it is, but that's not the.
Well, it has to be because it has to fund its existence.
But its outset is that it doesn't exist to make money.
Correct. It's not at the core of why it exists.
It should make money because it exists.
Yes.
It doesn't exist to make money.
Correct.
Which is, like if anyone listening to this, of any business model ever in the history of anything.
Yeah.
That's
terrible business model, but I respect that business model.
Yeah, exactly. And basically it's a sliding scale. So then people who are more affluent and have like, and who enjoy the meats, I'm not expecting
chuck a pineapple in.
Yeah, and they do. Because that's normal for them.
Absolutely. Because it's no skin off their nose.
No, and the expectation is not there.
No.
So it's like they
don't care, but they're also investing in you.
Yep.
Because they're like, big ups to you for putting in the work because they understand.
Yep.
And I think that's actually probably the big difference is they're the sort of people that understand the sort of work that it takes to put something like that together. And there's a real nod to that.
Yeah, well, the majority of them are entrepreneurs and business guys and that sort of thing.
So they get it. They know. They don't just assume that it all happens by magic. They know that you worked your ring out.
Yeah, and the main one is the hardest one for people to quantify into, the expense of hiring. There's all the stuff that I've had to buy for the event. There's everything else that comes with it, which is like a reasonable amount of money. You definitely couldn't do it regularly unless you had a lot behind you, but it's not like crazy. The biggest quantifying thing is the use of time. So leading up to the event, my last one, I was talking to some mates about it. The week leading up, where I'm like talking to, especially like the high end car owners, the exotics, because they're the guys that they're busy people.
Of course.
So I'm not on their back about attending. They can attend if they want, but I just want to double check and be like, hey, are you coming? So I know that I have to put a park aside.
Put a space aside for that car.
And you talk to them and it's messaging them. The week leading up to the last meet, my screen time on my phone.
Mate, you'd have thousands of messages.
My screen time was, so I have a full-time job too. And it's like, that's like 8 or 9 hours a day, sometimes a bit more. My screen time on my phone was 9 hours a day. averaging.
Far out. Because, every minute that you weren't at work, like, you'd be, like, all night. You'd
Lunch
be up
times,
till
even
midnight
at work, man. Like,
Yeah.
even if a message comes through that I need to reply to,
you got to stay on it.
I've got to stay on it. Like, I put my effort into my job. I enjoy my job. I work with a great team. But if someone comes through, especially like a big
You can't
hit,
let it slide.
like a big hitter,
Yeah.
I got to get back to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you got to respect the time.
And that's the massive one. And then that's when I was talking to my mates from Likewise. They were like, man, you need to, like, you can't just keep putting that sort of time and effort in. And especially then the week after, all the photos getting tagged in, all the resharing, responding to everyone, I'd love to meet, or, oh, why didn't I get in? Any sort of comment. I appreciate any comment sent, regardless if it's criticism or not.
Otherwise. Yeah.
And it's just like, then that was like 8 or 9 hours a day screen time, which is mental. Like, I'm sleeping like 4 hours a night, if that. But it's all worth it when the event runs. I'm stressed as hell, especially when like something goes wrong. But
yeah, of course.
my biggest, like the biggest satisfaction is pulling cars out that people don't see. That's just what I want. And I'm narcissistic on that because I'm doing it for me. I'm using these events
Absolutely. You're like,
to see the
I want
cars,
to see some cool cars.
to see the cars that I want to see.
Yeah.
So I've had some. It's crazy how fast it's sort of taken off, which I got to give like props to like friends and people who've supported it and people who backed me and knew like my character and my enthusiasm for cars. So we've already had we've had an F40, we've had Carrera GT, I've had 2 like genuine $1 million DB6 builds, like Aventador Ultimates, 458 Speciales, Mercedes SLSs, like all the big hitters. But then we've also had like a lot of big dog like import builds and luxury cars. I like to differentiate luxury cars as like BMWs and then like supercars as their own sort of mix. So in that we've had a heap of 34 GTRs, crossed a bunch of Midnight Purple 2, Midnight Purple 3, Silica Brass, Millennium Jade, and then I've had we've even had first generation Cosmo, Mazda Cosmo come. An L10A.
I'd say that as much.
Oh man, that's nice. Shout out to Danny Irvine. Man is an absolute legend. But yeah, just had some cool cars attend, as well as like some big streeters, like 1200 horsepower, like LC Tiranas and all that sort of stuff.
Monster.
Yep. And then like Fonzie Abbott have jumped on board. They're now coming they're doing the coffee and stuff.
That's very cool.
Dan.
Because they support bike stuff as well. I've been to.
Yeah, they do car stuff too.
Been to one of their meets out there. One of my motorbike friends took me.
The Dirt Hustle, whatever it's called.
Yeah, I've been to that, but just one of the ones that they do at their shop. I'm like, oh, that's all.
Yeah, no, they're big on the scene, so I hit that. Like they hit me up, which was cool. And then it was very fast how I started running the events, and then like I don't know what was going on, but people all of a sudden I just became very quickly like this person in the scene who knew like all the goings on and what was happening. I was already kind of like that, but it was just I was sort of like that for my own accord. And now some of the things that have come out of running these events are crazy, and like the effort has been fully worth it. Like I got the chance to see Lindsay Fox's private car collection.
Yeah, wow.
Which was like that offer came out of nowhere.
Has he still got the XJ220?
He does. Yeah. Silver one. Yeah. Fucking crazy. Yeah. I know a guy up in Brisbane, he's considering selling it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say his name, but he's got a burgundy one.
Because I know that there's one here.
There's a couple.
Yeah.
There's a couple here. But the burgundy one is a proper special one.
Because do you know what's crazy? Is I still think they're grossly undervalued.
They're getting expensive.
Yeah.
But they have been undervalued
for what they
are.
Yeah. When I look at what the dumb money people are paying for Porsches, and I'm like, you could have an XJ220 and like have one of the kings
and the looks
of cars. Oh, God.
They have aged.
Looks.
Like, they have aged extremely. If you were to say to someone who has never seen a car before in their life.
This is 90s, early 90s.
Or just knows, like, say not someone who hasn't seen a car. Say if you were to say to someone who only knows like Econo boxes or SUVs, and you'll be like, I want you to draw what you think a supercar would look like. It's a fucking XJ220.
Oh man, it is an XJ220.
Yep.
Like that blew my mind, and I still think they're one of the most beautiful cars ever made.
Easy.
And they've just slid under the radar for reasons I don't understand.
They're getting up there now. I think there's 2 listed. There's one listed for 1.1.
Okay,
silver
so they're on
one.
their way. So they've had they got the COVID bump too, because they were changing hands for like $400,000 or $500,000 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. And this burgundy one that a friend of mine has, he shouldn't sell it. I think he shouldn't sell it, but there's a reason he wants to sell it.
Yeah.
It's because he can't drive it. And the reason he can't drive it is because it has, I could be wrong on the exact figure, but it's got 987 kilometers.
Crap.
He's like, if I go over 1,000, it loses like, it's dumb that that's a thing, but it loses prominence.
It's really sad.
So now if it gets listed at that under 1,000 Ks, that is a global car.
Oh, that is a global car.
That is a proper global car.
Correct. That needs to go. Yeah. Because that'll go to one of the big private collections.
Yeah, so it's going to get put through, and I think I don't know if it'll go off market or not, but the Absolute Legend at Sports Classic, which is like almost like a consignor car group of guys. Charlie from there, I talked to him a fair bit. He questions me for cars and stuff like that. They're legends. They're the ones who've gotten their hands on it, and yeah, it's gonna be cool. It'll be cool to see what he gets for it. But man, because they did burgundy, and then there was another really cool color they did, which was that green.
Yeah,
that jewel green.
Yeah,
man, XJ's are a special car, but it would have been great to get that out to the meets, but it would have had to be trailered. But I'm always working on like trying to get new cars out, and it's amazing what is sitting.
Oh man, the stuff that's sitting away. Once you get talking to people,
it's fucked.
Like the stuff.
It's crazy, and it's the worst part is that these car spotters are like getting really in the face of these owners.
Yeah, and they don't want that. Most people that own that stuff are very discreet.
Yeah, and they come from a different. Come from a different cloth, right? Yes. They're from people when you weren't supposed to advertise how much you had.
No, you keep that quiet. There was no flexing.
No, because it was bad.
What a baller you are.
Yeah.
Like that was actually shameful.
Yeah. So everything was kept lock and key.
Yeah.
And look, like I love these car spotter kids. They're fucking awesome. I talk to a heap of them. Some of them are really good kids, but most of them, man, like they know too much about these owners. And I'm like, you need to look. They're young. These kids are still in high school. They don't get like social dynamics of that
of how all this works.
You shouldn't just be easily able to reach out to these guys. You should have to go through people. And so, but some of the cars sitting around that I'm like working on trying to get out. I'm trying to get the LFA out, which is going to be a difficult one. It's the one that sits at Lexus Toowong. There's a LaFerrari. Trying to get an F50 out. Just trying to get the cool so people can see them. Because these cars need to be fucking seen.
Because they're amazing.
Yeah, I'm working on trying to get. At the moment, it's been a bit difficult, but I'm trying to get 4 F40s together. There's about 6 in Queensland.
Oh, they really?
Yeah.
That's astonishing.
But then some of them are like on the Gold Coast and shit. But trying to get the 4 F40s together just to do cool stuff like
just
that.
because you can, like what Andrew's done with GDR Festival.
100% exactly what Andrew's done.
Going, because like what Andrew's done for the scene, it's the same thing. He's just worked because he loves it, and he's like, well, why don't we?
Yeah.
And if I won't, who will?
Yeah.
And that's
exactly pretty much what it came.
doing.
It's pretty much what it came to. Like we were going to every month I try and get to Cooperoo Cars and Coffee, which was like the first one. That's like Brisbane's sort of first Cars and Coffee event.
Yeah.
Always try and go with mates, and it's so spread out and all over the place.
Yeah.
Because it's not curated. The main benefit of curated parking is that people with big boy cars, not even supercars, like modified cars, I'm talking 1,000 horsepower GDRs and stuff, they're not getting up at 5:30 to get to a car meeting.
Oh, God, no.
You know what I mean? Especially not the supercar guys.
Absolutely
Hypercar guys likely won't even show.
No.
But when they decide to, they're going to get there when they want to.
Correct.
So they need a park. Any other Cars and Coffee event, even downshift and all that.
Bad luck.
If you get there outside of the main entry window, you're either not getting in or you're parking in the boonies.
And that's my biggest problem. I actually tried to go to Cars and Coffee because I haven't been for ages because my son does swimming on a Saturday morning. And I had him in the car with me and I was in my old Land Cruiser. And I thought, we'll roll through. Because I knew some people that were there that morning. And we rolled through at like 25 minutes past 8 and it's a ghost town.
Yeah, it's done.
And like I remember that it used to go till sort of 9:30, 10 maybe. Yep. Like people would hang around.
Yep.
But now it seems like the fight is getting up at 4 a.m, being there at 5:36, 6:30 to get the park, to have the exclusive park, and then it's over at 7:30. And I'm like, what has happened here?
Yeah,
it's like, this is crap because I just wanted to go and see some cars and see some people at 8:30. And I'm like, how is this gone?
It's it's an absolute, like, it's the worst part of it. And it does
sad.
It does my head in.
Because I wanted to go and see some cars.
Yeah, it's big because the events. That's supposed to start at 7:30, right?
Is that what its start time is?
Yeah, that's what the poster says. That's what I mean. Yeah. So then it became everyone's like, oh, I didn't get a park at 7:30. There at 7, 6:30, 6, 5:30, 5. I know people who've left their cars overnight
What?
I'm not even slightly taking the piss.
Wow.
And it got to the point where it was like, because it's not curated, anyone can get in.
Yeah.
The special cars don't make it. So that's why my events start at 7:30.
Yeah. Let's see. That's respectable.
Cars start rocking up around 6:45 to 7, but we're usually prepared.
Yeah.
The last one, I had people rocking up at 6:10.
Yeah. Like, settle down.
Yeah. So I was like, are you fucking serious?
Early doesn't help.
No, you still park out the back.
Yeah, you're out the back. You can just
And
sit
that
there
way,
like
that way these big guys know.
Yeah.
And that's why they love the events.
Absolutely. Because they roll up, you lift the gate, and you're like, there you go, mate. You're
bang,
in.
You park, and there's a park in there for you.
You've got
and
a
if there's
spot.
not, we'll make you a fucking
Yeah,
spot.
we'll find you a park.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's how you get these big cars out. And what a lot of people don't realize is you don't have to pander to the people with the high-end cars, because as much as not everyone listening or not everyone who goes to my meets cares about supercars, they are what solidifies you in terms of where people take you seriously. Because if you can pull
absolutely.
an F40 or
That's
a Carrera GT out,
genuine respect.
yeah, it's like, oh shit, okay, he's actually putting in effort to get big cars out. Because those people are less inclined to go to meets.
Absolutely.
Most people
They
with
got
an
no
import,
interest in that sort of stuff.
yeah, most people with an import or something like that will still go to meets.
Whereas if you've got the TikTok account, you're going to everything.
Well, yeah,
But again, the people that own those cars, like, they don't want to show them off. They don't need to show them off. They don't care. Their mates know they've got them. They enjoy it for them. It's not to flex.
no, and they're all older guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There is ones who drive like modern generation ones that come that are there to flex, but the big boy cars,
The big boy cars, they're not flexing dudes.
I'm sorry to say to anyone who's like looking to aspire to make billions in their life, but the majority of people who own $1 million cars, they would all be like 60 plus
Absolutely.
years old, if not more. But yeah, that's all about just trying to get those cars out, and then like talking to those guys and getting along with those guys and making them understand like, oh, actually, yeah, this is pretty good. I'm interested in bringing my car out. Oh, I've got some more cars. And there's some of the cars that I've found out about through the meets that exist.
Because they just bring the cheap, expensive car.
Yeah.
the one that they're comfortable driving, not the special one. They don't bring the special one the first time.
No. And then some of the cars, like, and I have like future goals to try and get out like some of, not just Queensland, but some of Australia's most special cars. I have like a Halo car that I'd love to get out. Anyone who knows me listening would probably think it's the McLaren F1, but it's not, because I know I'm never getting that car. But there's a Z-Tune in Sydney, R34 Z-Tune in Sydney, and it's build 1001. So I'd fucking love to get that car up here somehow. Cool. Like, that's just the goat. But like when I said I do themes, the new Civic Type R came out, right? Awesome looking car. The last one was a bit interesting looking. This one looks really good. Friends of mine got one. Then happened to another one rocked up to the same meet. So this is the last meet that happened. There's display parking, and then there's like display in display. There's waterfront parking, which overlooks the Brisbane River. So that's where I park like the really special stuff.
Yes, the premium.
Yeah. So I did a Civic display, and I was like, fuck any supercar owner that blows up about this. So I had like EK9, I had EG6, EK9, and I had all the way up through. There was a couple missing. Actually, there was only one missing, which was a UK only sale, FK2 Type R. But yeah, I had them all from the new one, then the FK8 down, and I had a row of Civics, and I was like, this is what I give a shit about. This is
cool.
That was heaps of fun to set up. I got mates, I get mates to volunteer and park the cars. They fucking love it because the cars come in.
Yeah.
It's the best way to see a car, to park it up. And yeah, it's just good vibe sort of thing, and I'm keen to sort of develop on it a little more. Should be going to a new location at some point, which is next door. They're building like a big area with my events in mind, because the state government just throws money around sort of thing. So they're doing it'll be hireable for anyone sort of thing.
Okay.
But they're going to do it, they're going to make it so it's like car accessible.
Wow.
Which would be cool. It's
That's
like big sheds
impressive.
on the waterfront. Yeah. So they're really
the fact that they're supporting it is amazing. That's testament to the work you're doing.
Yeah. I've got to give massive props to the state government in general, Economic Development Queensland. Like, they've been super supportive of it. And I think the reason is because I came when they asked me about it, and I had to give them sort of a mission statement and what I was going to do, and a rough idea of what I was doing. I came at it differently, and I was like, this isn't a car meet. This is more like a static art show. Like, I'm going to be focusing on like quality cars over just any humdrum thing. And I said to them, I was like, this is going to be something where the patrons who live in the area, when they're out on their walks, they're going to walk through and be like, oh, and there'll be food and coffee and stuff. They can get that too.
Mate, they'll be proud of it.
And they were like, oh, but, you know, we're going to have to let them know about paid entry. I was like, no, walk-ins are free. They were like, oh, that's really good. So our people can get a benefit. I was like, yeah. And then they would leave, like, the cars will leave here and get breakfast in the area. And so they've been fully on board with it.
That's amazing.
Trying to spruce it up. But I'm working on some pretty cool things with some other groups and stuff like that. Ones I'm not super, can't really give anything away.
No.
Not because I'm scared of other people taking it, but I really dislike saying something's going to happen and then it doesn't happen.
And then not being able to do it.
So I get contacted probably 5 to 6 times a week asking what cool stuff is coming to the next meet. On the lead up to the meet, I probably get contacted 20 times a day of people being like, oh man, like anything hectic coming? It's like they want to know if they should come or not. I'm not telling them because I want them to come anyway. I'm not telling them because if what I say doesn't show,
then people will be
then
disappointed.
People will be like, oh, well, you said that was going to be there. It's like, well, I can't.
No, I can't. Something might have happened. They might not be well.
I
Car might not start, which quite often happens.
100%.
Like,
so I always say to people, they're like, oh, what are you working on to get there? I was like, look, I'm working on some cool stuff.
Yeah.
Like I just mentioned a few cars.
but turn up if you want to see it.
Yeah, but they may or may not be there.
Yeah.
They may not be there for, I might get 4 F40s in 2 years' time. Or I might get them in July. Who knows? These people, they sort of do their own thing. I'm not going to pander them and be like, hey, you coming to my meet, blah, blah, blah. I'm not that way inclined.
You're not that guy.
No, because they don't get anything from it.
No, absolutely not.
I mean, they have a fun morning.
They have a nice time. They see their friends. They do some things. But, like, realistically, they're supporting you because they believe in you and your vision.
Yep. And it's like that's meeting people through contacts. And that's the goal, really. And hopefully there's some pretty cool stuff that I want to develop on in terms of, like, not just Cars and Coffee will continue to run. It'd be interesting to see how I do it in the future because I'm at the point where I don't know how to replace myself in terms of like getting off the tools because I'm on the front gate.
You are the project, which is a bit of a problem.
That's going to be difficult in the future, but look, whatever. Cross that bridge when I get to it. But there's a few cool things I'm working on in terms of like proper static shows. One for like car builds and one for like exotics. And by exotic, I mean rare cars. It doesn't have to be supercar. It can be
just rare.
It can be rare. Like I would consider a XY Phase 3 GTHO an exotic car.
Yeah. Well, if you don't see them all the time, they're a rare car.
Yeah, W1 GDSR, exotic. But some people will complain to that. I wouldn't consider an Urus an exotic.
Well, it's not.
Yeah, but so there's some pretty cool things coming in the future. But yeah, it's just it's a matter of time, sort of thing. It's taking it easy, taking it slow.
Yeah. Don't rush it.
I jumped in full flight. Like I had a upper management job, paying well, like a job that people sort of aspire to get to, managing like a big branch sort of thing. And these meets, I'd only just started them. I was planning the second, and an opportunity arose. A conversation came up, and an opportunity arose where I could step down to closer to home, and way more free time than like upper management. Way more, like all of it. Like I was just burning time, and the other job did it for 3 years, and I was like, fuck it. Like, I'm not getting any younger. This like, send it, right?
Lick the stamp.
Yeah, just go. Like, if this is what I want to do, and I want to do cars full time, then just send it. And we were talking about Mark Arsenal before. There's another guy who's probably like the biggest inspiration to me. His name's Joey Lee. He runs a blog called The Chronicles. His Instagram's @StickyDiljo. Interesting name. Shout out to that dude. I've met him a couple of times, but he was a massive inspiration in terms of like writing style, car style, learning new products and all that sort of stuff, learning cars, being educated on cars. But he has a saying, and it's a saying I'm obsessed with, absolutely well and truly obsessed with, and it's passion first and the rest shall follow. And I was just like, man, I've listened to that saying for like 10 years for him to say that. I was like, it's about time I just gave it a crack.
Passion first and the rest shall follow.
Yeah, so it's basically like if you're passionate about something and you're really passionate, I'm not talking like you're into something because it's kind of cool for a bit.
10 tenths.
Yeah, 10 tenths. Like fully obsessed, fully like this is what you want to do. You consume it 24/7. Yeah, 100%. And I was like, this is cars for me. Like it's why a lot of people when they meet me for the first time, if they've known me just for online persona, it's like, wait, you don't work in the car industry? I'm like, no. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what are you doing? Why? So you just know all this for like your own accord? I was like, yeah, 100%. They're like, yeah, you should maybe like. A lot of people say start a YouTube.
Yeah.
I know the graft that comes from YouTube. No chance. No chance. I don't have the wherewithal. I don't have the dedication. There's no way I could do a YouTube, man.
It's a turd. I'm 16 months into that, man.
Yeah.
And I've made like probably 200 videos.
Yeah.
And like it's still doing nothing.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden there'll be one little spark.
And it'll take, 3 or 4 years. But like you've got to do it for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. And then they'll get a spark and you'll get a following. And then all of a sudden that following is demanding. And then you're like, oh, well, I have no life anymore.
Mm. And you're right. Like it's a terrible process. Whereas what you're doing here, like I see it, I truly see the vision. And this is why I was actually really interested to talk to you, because I only know you as your online persona.
Yes.
And I feel like that what you could do is you could post a picture of a fake wheel and like the Rory signal goes up and so, somebody will tag you and then it'll be like, whoo, and then we're like, right, it's on.
It legit happens. Like I get tagged and that sort of stuff.
Just you can come and carve them up.
Yeah, I legit get tagged in that, and depending on like my mood or like how that person's handling the online thing, I'll go all in. But yeah, it's kind of it's funny that when people were saying like you should do an online persona, you should do like a YouTube and that sort of thing, and
so people can get to know you. That would probably be the advantage.
But I was considering of doing YouTube, and having my face permanently blurred in every video.
Nice.
Because I was just like, fuck it, like
who cares?
Yeah, I'm not about. I want if I was to do a YouTube, it would be about cars or what I'm doing. I don't want it to be about me. You know what I mean? There's I don't really follow any YouTubers, but there's one guy I do follow. His name's John Tamarian. He owns a shop in South Beach, Miami, called Curated, or We Are Curated is the Instagram, and he does like car procurement and car sales for like real special stuff. And he's a proper car nerd. Like he's like one of the foremost guys on Countachs and Diablos. Mm. And that's the sort of cars he moves.
Yeah,
and
he's just mad for it.
And his YouTube is like the best thing ever. I watch his videos. I'm like, man, this dude is living the dream. And he's just an awesome guy.
Yeah.
So if I was going to start a YouTube, it would be that. The difference is his YouTube has come off his business. Mm. He hasn't started the YouTube as a business. It's a branch covering what his business does. I was like, if I was going to do one, it'd be that. But nah, Instagram takes up enough time. Maybe when I ever get to the point of doing what I'm doing now full time, which I'm not, like I really enjoy my job. Mm. Like it's fun. I work with a great bunch of dudes. Mm. I can do my job. I have a sick boss and run the meets at the same time. Mm. But if something happened and they took off stratospherically and I was making money and all of a sudden my day job was detrimentally affecting my ability to earn, I'd probably quit and then full send. But that's down the road. I'm like different to the young kids these days. I understand that like I'm not going to make $1 billion tomorrow. You know what I mean?
No, man, you got to put the work in. But that's the thing is you've been putting the work in, and you even made the comment that something that you did 10 years ago then pays dividends now.
Yeah,
and that's what people don't understand off the back of your instant gratification stuff is that to build, credibility, legacy, all those sorts of things where you can rock up and people go, oh, I know who you are, I know what you stand for, I know that your word counts for something.
Yeah. Now the hardest part is
that takes time.
The one thing that I have to, because obviously everyone gets in their own head, right? The one thing I have to tell myself is that, I started these meets and they've been really successful for us. And a couple of times because I was telling them, I was like, man, I need to do something. Like I need to run a meet, I've been saying that for 4 years. And I was saying to myself, I should have done this years ago. Mm. I don't think I was ready. I think the time literally fell perfectly where I had like the right amount of contacts.
Yeah.
I'd been away from downshift for a long enough time where there wasn't a crossover in terms of people being like, oh, that's for the longest time. For years, I was known as Rory from downshift. That was like a nickname I had. And that's gone. Only very OG people call me that anymore. Yeah. So that I sort of left that. Not that there's anything wrong with being affiliated with downshift, but it comes with a certain,
correct.
Oh, he's from downshift, so this meet's going to be
AU Falcons.
It's also going to be 1,000 cars. Mm. And it's going to be a shit show, and there's going to be cops fucking everywhere. And I was like, okay, that's great and all, but I don't want that. So taking the break, getting a corporate job, working through, separating, but still having an online persona, building up a new Instagram, has like paid dividends. And now that I'm older, like in my 30s, it is so much easier to make progress talking to people than it was when I was in my 20s. When I was trying to invite supercars to downshift meets, this was before downshift was what it is now. We had like a VIP row, right? Before then, people just would be like, oh yeah, whatever. You know, you could talk to supercar guys when you were in your teens, which was because you didn't have a license, you're a high school kid. They wanted to be like, oh yeah, I'll show you my Ferrari. And then you get out of that and you still think you have that effect. They're like, no, you're an adult now.
Yeah.
Fuck off.
It just doesn't count.
Yeah.
Because interestingly, and you'll remember this as somebody that bought a 450D and got going, there was a real hierarchy to becoming a photographer as well. And you hadn't made it until you were photographing supercars.
Yep.
And I really remember that as a thing.
It was a big thing.
Because lusting after being allowed to photograph a supercar was like such a privilege.
It was massive. And it's funny, like this, like you said, like things come back full circle. I guess it's 3 degrees of separation in Brisbane. But like a car that we shot for downshift, we shot 3 cars for downshift back in, 2011. And it was 2 Superleggera Gelatos and Murcielago 670 SV Super Veloce. So like the peak Murcielago, the GOAT. Like probably one of my all-time favorite cars.
That's a special car.
Yeah, Arancio Argos, which is the orange plates of missile. So cool. Anyway, the guy owns it. Awesome dude, legendary dude, funny as. His name's Roger. After that, I didn't ever meet him again. Like I didn't see him for years. And then now that I'm running these meets, I've like contacted him again because he's still got cool cars. Doesn't have the SV anymore. And it's trying to get him back to the meet. And I sent him some pictures. I was like, hey man, I was the one that organised this photo shoot. So I organised a shoot. I contacted them all. Matthias did the photos because Matthias was an awesome photographer. Yeah. And he was like, what the fuck? And it's like that, like we're talking about, like that prominence. He's like, oh, he's been around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you've done your time.
Back then, when I was 21 when we did that shoot, there was no way in hell he was giving me any ounce of his time at 21. I mean, I was an all right kid at 21. I wasn't a dickhead, but I'm still a 21-year-old.
Correct.
And he's a guy with a Murcielago SV. You know what I mean? He's not really giving me time. Now, I was in my late 20s, early 30s. He's like, oh, yeah, I remember that shoot. How good's that? It's like, I've been around. I've learned some shit. We can like bond over things. He's like, oh, yeah, I'll bring some cars out when I'm around. So I was like, why the fuck is this way easier? So I think I had to go for some time.
Well, you've also got to survive in the game.
Yeah.
Is one of the other things that I've seen because, you know, I've been around this stuff for a very long time now. And back when I started, all I ever wanted was just to be a good photographer.
Yeah.
And, you know, I used to like look up to Just Dave Reed.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And like he was, to me, you know, he was the pinnacle of photography. He was doing all the shoots and covers of magazines. And like to me, that was the dream.
Yeah,
like
100%.
the goal was to like not even get a cover, but like to shoot a car that would go into a magazine.
Yep.
And like I look back at that now and you're just so far away from that place to where you are now.
Yep.
Whereas, you know, the idea of that when I look back at it, that like that was
100%.
Oh mate, when I first got an article into Fast Fours and Rotaries, like I rang them and I pitched them the thing.
Yep.
And I actually got paid for that one, would you believe it? Because I did, words and photos. And like you got 400, it was like $600 total. And I can't remember which was worth more, but, you know, 400 and 200 for the words and the images. But like I've still got that magazine.
Yeah.
Because that, for me, like that was the pinnacle.
It still kind of is.
Of all these things. But you look back at that, and again, because you didn't know anybody, nobody knew you, but you look at this now, and the fact that these people are your friends, your contacts, and people you can just reach out to, and you're like, oh, g'day, mate. And they're like, hey, how you doing? What's up? Like,
it's crazy, because I like in my head, I'm like still the same dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then when these people do give me the time of day, especially guys with like special cars, and some of them are like good mates. Like some of the guys with really high-end cars are like really good mates. Like guys I'll like spend years with and stuff like that. They've got crazy car collections. And like...
Well, you're a peer now. That's the difference.
Yeah, and the internal appreciation I have for those people giving me time.
Oh man,
Like as
absolutely.
like the younger version of myself inside me being like, fuck,
Totally.
like, man, this dude's giving you like, you're getting to drive and go in these sick cars.
Absolutely.
I'm just like I'll never, like ever, like take that for granted. I ever take that for granted. I never take for granted the cars I hang around. Never take for granted the people I hang around. Never take for granted like my mates and stuff.
But you get it, and see that's what people end up respecting, is the fact that you've come through that, and that was sort of the point of my story. You know, I've watched a lot of people want to be photographers or want to come into motorsport or want to come into cars, and they come in with no concept of what it takes.
No.
And people that I've met that wanted to be involved in racing and these sorts of things, they have no concept of what it takes to be involved in racing. Getting to a race team's the easy part. Lasting in motorsport, good luck to you. If you're not of exceptional character, work your ring out, you know, and a good human, there's no way you'll make it.
Same in business too.
Mate, same in everything.
People,
same in life.
Yeah. People just see like, and it's unfortunate, Instagram sort of leads people to believe that it's easy. But yeah, it's like you said, like people, like the main thing I get from people who have like a lot of money and are very successful and have a lot of cool cars is a few friends of mine now have said like, I remember one of them, he said, do you even know what I did to make my money? I was like, I got a vague idea, but not really. He's like, man, I've known you for like 3 or 4 years. You've just like never asked. I was like, man, you can tell me if you want, but whatever you did to make your money, I don't really care.
No.
In saying that, I'm not saying that in the sense that he made his money in a dodgy sense.
No, but it's more that you don't care about the money.
No.
Like it's not impressive.
No. I'm just like, yeah, you're successful. It's great. And like hanging around those people is ultra good for like your mind and like your thinking process. But I'm not hanging out with them because they're rich, which a lot of people try to.
Correct.
And people who are rich for a reason because they're cunning, they're good. They can see that.
You can smell it, mate.
Yeah,
you can
see it from a
always
mile
smell
away.
it. And I also think that that's something that people don't understand is if you're not there for the right reasons, everybody knows.
Yeah.
Like you stick out like a sore thumb and you might think you're smooth and you might think you're playing the game and talking the right talk, but you're not.
No.
You stick it. Like
You say the wrong things that you think are the right things, yeah.
the craziest thing that I came to appreciate, and it took me a long time, was the wealthiest people I've ever met in my life. You'd never know.
No.
You'd never know.
No.
They drive a real basic car. You know, it might have a nice-ish house, but you have no idea otherwise. If you were to just meet them out and about, that's when if I see people.
There's usually a couple of giveaways,
there's
giveaways.
There's a few tells, but
yeah, normally
for the most part, very subtle, very discreet. Like they're not wearing Gucci and getting out of, they're not the people parking at the flash hotels in the valley to show everybody, that they're leased up to the eyeballs with the latest expensive car. It's the money talks, wealth whispers.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one because that's true. Like, yeah, the wealthiest people I know, no chance you'd maybe know if you're really good at spotting them. There's a few slips of the tongue in terms of like you're like, oh, what the fuck? That's not a normal thing to say. Or like watches are a big one because people who like cars typically like watches.
Yeah, and that can be a giveaway.
But other than that, no chance. Usually they drive their dailies, which are like a nice daily, but nothing crazy. Yeah, I'm the exact same. The wealthiest people I know is no way you'd ever know.
And I've come to really appreciate that.
Yeah,
as a style.
And 100%.
I get that. Like I dig it.
Yeah.
I dig not caring.
And the other difference
and
is
not
like
needing to prove it.
the easiest way to spot a proper rich person is if they have an old car that's a very big dollar car. If they've got $1 million car that's from like the 80s or 90s, or more than $1 million from 80s or 90s. There's no finance on that.
No.
Your capital, straight capital. You could probably put some of it on finance.
But you're not financing.
The repayments would be astronomical.
Yeah.
So that's what I think. Like everyone sees like your big brand new Ferraris, your big brand new Lambos. People post on Instagram, they've got the girls, they've got the lifestyle, they've got the cars. Those people are rich for sure. Absolutely rich. But they're not rich.
They're not rich. And that's the difference is I look at, because again, I know people and a lot of those cars and a lot of the flexing cars and they're financed cars.
Oh, they're to the teeth.
And that's what I laugh at is I'm like, you're out here trying to show people what a success you are with your car that you don't own.
The bank owns.
Whereas I actually go back to, I actually have really gotten into old shit boxes because I can't tell you how much joy it brings me to buy a car for $1,000 or $5,000 and then just like love the hell out of that car. Because like I would love a 3-cylinder Starlet.
Oh, yeah.
Like just because I think they're a cool car with a 2-door and a 3, and you're like you
no
launch
finance
it.
sewing, no control. Yep.
But you can bang the doors and it doesn't matter. Like I dig that.
Yep.
And I don't know why. I don't know why I think that that's a cool car.
Yeah, it's because you own it. Then you don't have any. There's any stress on
And
it.
there's
or anything.
none of that. And there's none of the bullshit associated with it. There's none of that fronting, and there's none of that. I don't know. Like I don't enjoy.
I'm the same.
That whole thing.
I'm the same as well. Like, obviously, there's a fair few of them that come to the meet and stuff like that, and most of them are like pretty nice guys. But I think you put them in a different circumstance, they might be a bit difficult. But yeah, it's crazy to me that people look at like the modern stuff and people buying like brand new, like taking delivery, like brand new supercars and that. And sure, there's a lot of them that are cash.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. And
but if you want to really look at someone and be like, that's what I want to aspire, it's the people with the F40s, with the F50s. Like if you look,
it's those blokes. But they've also owned that car since before people cared about cars, and that's the difference. They're not part of this new wave of car flexing. Like I remember when like a Di Tomaso Pantera was a $10,000 car, and people were like really a nice pretend Lamborghini, mate. Like when. Because nobody cared about cars. It was only the people that were mental about it.
Yeah.
Whereas now I've seen what they're going for now, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like this was a disrespected car,
and now they're massive money.
and now they're massive. I'm like, what happened?
But that's also true. Like a lot of the big collectors, they've had the cars for a long time.
No, they've had it for a long time because they were doing it when it was, you could buy them cheap because nobody wanted them because it was a bad choice.
Yep. And now they're worth heaps of money, but still, you look at like someone who has. Like you could buy, if you bought like a brand new $1.5 million, let's say a brand new Lamborghini for 1.5 mil or whatever. And obviously if it's financed, the difference in paying 1.5 mil for a brand new car and paying, 1.5 to 2 mil for say a 2006 Carrera GT is a big difference. Not just in purchase, but in ownership.
Absolutely.
Costs involved in cars like that.
Yeah, old stuff.
You need to be like, you don't just need to be rich. You need to be fucking filthy rich.
It's like owning a boat, like owning a proper boat.
Yeah.
Where 20% of the cost of the machine is what it will cost you to
when you're talking about $15,000 clutches and
absolutely
$10,000 minor services.
Yeah, every time you blink it's somewhere between 10 and 30 grand.
Not to mention
to have something done.
Insurance.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's either self-insured, which means you don't have insurance.
Correct.
And you're just paying it yourself.
Yeah, or it's through the roof.
Or it's 50, 60, 100 grand a year.
Monster.
Like you got to think about it. The guy who owns the only McLaren F1 in Australia, it's in Victoria. It's registered. He drives it. If that's insured some way, somehow, that's a $25 million car. That's a $30 million Australian car. $30 million plus Australian car. What's his insurance repayments on that?
I couldn't even do the math.
It'll be.
But how do you insure that? That's the other problem. Like how do you track the value? The whole thing's a nightmare.
You know what I mean? Like, so he's either self-insured, which means he's putting money away in case if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Or he's paying insurance on that. And in which case of, like, how much money is that?
I can't even fathom that.
Oh, it would be... he's obviously he'd be registered. He'd be doing like less than 1,000 kilometers a year, probably less than 500 kilometers a year.
Good.
Right? It'd have to be like fully secure, posted garage. It'd be insured with Lloyd's of London or something like that.
Correct. They'll underwrite anything.
Yeah. But he'd be paying, probably in the realm of. It has to be more than 100 grand a month, minimum. Probably way more than that.
To try and insure because if something went wrong and you had to make that claim or a full replacement.
Well, it's never getting written off. Like. That's never getting.
No, it's not. They'd rebuild.
Yeah, there's no way it's getting written off,
mate. It
gets mind bending at that level.
Again, which is why I'm back at $5,000 shit boxes because it took it. And actually, I think that's what it is. I think I've just had the realization is all the wankery that came with cars getting fashionable and a collector's item took a lot of the joy out of them. Because you can't drive them anymore, you can't put the Ks on them, you can't this, you can't that. Whereas at least cheap things that are interesting, you can drive them and not care.
Yeah, 100%.
Because I just want to drive the things.
Yeah,
I actually really enjoyed what you said about it being an art show, and I think that there's a big place for that. But me as a car enthusiast, I want to drive.
Yeah.
I want to have that.
Yeah, I'm definitely
experience.
primarily a driving enthusiast as well, but I understand so I try and have it in the morning so people can go for a drive afterwards. That's usually what I do.
Whereas, see, for me, and the point that I'm at in my life is I just love being able to chug my old Land Cruiser to do school pickup and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's just, I love that.
Yeah.
I love having stuff like just dailying dumb old things that have all that charm. So even in that 6-minute drive, you still have a really great time.
Yeah.
And I really love that because like my office and my house are like a minute away.
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like super close. I don't do a lot of driving for the most part. But the joy I get, trundling that thing
Through, yeah.
Yeah.
100%. There's a lot to be said about character.
I
in a
enjoy
car.
every moment of it.
Yeah. That's all we want out of a car. That's all we want.
Now, mate, we've been cracking here for nearly 3 hours.
It's a long time.
That is a long time.
Yeah.
And I was just looking at the thing. It's like 2 hours 50. So respect to anybody that's listened for this long.
Yeah.
But what I thought I might do is I might bring this to a close.
No, that's cool.
But, man, for people that want to follow you, how can they find you on the internet?
Easiest way would be Instagram. It's probably what I'm on the most. So that's Altered International, but it is altered.intl. So at altered.intl.
And then Northshore Cars and Coffee.
Northshore Cars and Coffee is promoted through there. It doesn't have its own Instagram. I run it all through Altered. That's because there will be other events to come. But yeah, Northshore Cars and Coffee every other month. So it's kind of, if you miss out 1 month, you do have to wait a length to the next one.
Wow.
But yeah, July 29th. I don't think I've even publicised that. But
July 29th, there you go.
July 29th is the next one.
First.
Yeah.
I'm going to, because I haven't been to one yet, because I haven't had anything interesting, but I'm going to try and bring my Vert, and because it'll be resprayed by then.
You can bring the Cruiser. It's pretty
Hopefully.
cool.
Yeah, Cruiser is actually pretty cool.
I always park Defenders in display and
Do
stuff.
you?
Yeah, I love Defenders. So, yeah.
Yeah, how good's a 110?
Yeah.
And this is the problem with car guys. We'll go forever.
Yeah.
But look, on that, but Rory, I'm really pleased that you accepted my invitation. It's been really lovely to get to meet you.
It's been awesome. I've always wanted to
talk smack.
To do a podcast, and I wanted to do it with someone who understood,
Who gets it?
not just like a podcast about, I don't know, like how did it all start and
Business
all this sort of
success.
Yeah, and I was like, nah.
Entrepreneur.
Yes, yeah.
Hashtag blessed.
Yeah, no, I hate the term entrepreneur. Love the term business owner. Hate the term entrepreneur.
I hate it too.
Yeah.
Or my favourite is everybody who's a CEO of a one-person company.
Yeah.
I'm like, you are not the CEO.
Yeah, you're also the
you don't
logistics
answer to a
manager.
board.
You're also the storeman.
Settle down. So is this your first one? Have you not done...
Never done a podcast before.
Really?
So yeah.
Mate.
Man, people are wigged out about that.
I feel very special.
Yeah, no.
Well, that makes it, and again, on that note, thank you very much, mate. It's been absolutely delightful.
No, it's been heap fun. It's
and
been
I'm
good.
pumped to come to North Shore Cars and Coffee. And in particular, understanding your ethos around it as well. I think it's really cool, man.
Yeah, that's what I try and do. Just try and be about the culture. If a cool car culture means my life's infinitely funner. So that's what I'm all about.
I dig it. All right. Thanks, buddy.
No
I'm
worries,
wrapping it
man.
up.
See ya.